Qur'an, Chapter 14, Surah Ibrahim by Sayyid Qutb. Translation by Muhammad Al-Amrani, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. This surah, Surah Ibrahim, is Meccan in origin, and its central theme aligns with the predominant subject of the Meccan surahs, the core tenets of faith, the great principles of revelation, prophethood, divine unity, resurrection, reckoning and recompense. Yet its discourse unfolds in a manner unique to it, as is the case with every Quranic surah, distinguishing it from its counterparts. The surah has its own atmosphere, its own mode of presentation, and its own unique lights and shades in which these profound truths are displayed. Truths which, though they may not differ substantively from those in other surahs, are presented from a distinct angle, under specific lights, thereby imparting a particular impression upon the heart of the reader. Thus, the reader perceives these truths anew thanks to the artistic snapshots that are brilliantly woven into the Quranic mode of expression. We use this expression, artistic snapshots, to describe the miraculous imagery within the Quranic style. It appears that the atmosphere of this surah, from its very name, Ibrahim, derives a share of its character. Ibrahim, the blessed patriarch, the grateful servant, the tender-hearted and ever-turning to God. All the qualities encompassing these attributes are evident in the mood of the surah, in the truths it highlights, and in its mode of expression and rhythm. This surah encapsulates several fundamental truths of faith, but two great truths overshadow the entire atmosphere of the surah, truths that are in harmony with the presence of Ibrahim, the patriarch within the surah's ambience, the truth of the unity of the message and the messengers and their unified call, as they stood as one nation confronting the Jahiliyyah that denied God's religion, despite the variance in times and places, and the truth of God's grace upon humanity and how it increases in response to gratitude, while most people, in their ingratitude and denial, fail to appreciate it. The prominence of these two truths does not negate the presence of other truths within the surah, but these two dominate the surah's atmosphere, which is what we wish to emphasize. The surah begins by defining the mission of the prophet and the book that was revealed to him, to lead humanity from darkness into light by God's permission, a book which we have sent down to you so that you may bring forth mankind from darkness into light, by the permission of their sustainer, to the path of the mighty, the praiseworthy. And it concludes with this same meaning, reiterating the great truth that the message contains, the truth of divine unity. This is a message for humanity, so that they may be warned thereby, and that they may know that He is but one God, and so that those possessed of understanding may take heed. Within the surah, it is mentioned that Musa was sent with the same mission as Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. The surah even uses similar language to describe their missions. Indeed, we sent Musa with our signs, saying, "Lead your people out of darkness into light." It also mentions that the role of all messengers was to convey the message in the language of their people. And we sent not a messenger except with the language of his people, so that he might make the message clear to them. The surah, while outlining the mission of the prophets, also clarifies their human nature, which defines their role. They are mere conveyors, warners, and guides. They cannot bring about miracles except by God's permission, and when God wills, not when they or their people wish, nor do they have the power to guide or lead their people astray. For guidance and misguidance are matters tied to God's will, which His absolute volition has decreed. The human nature of the prophets was the source of objection from all the nations in their state of Jahiliyyah, and here the surah recounts their collective complaint. They said, "You are but human beings like us, and you wish to turn us away from what our forefathers worshipped. So bring us clear authority." And the response of their messengers also collectively. Their messengers said to them, "We are indeed human beings like you. But God bestows His grace upon whomsoever He wills of His servants. It is not for us to bring you authority, except by the permission of God. And upon God let the believers rely." The surah also emphasizes that leading people from darkness into light happens only by the permission of their sustainer. Every prophet clarifies the message to his people, after which God guides whom He wills and leads astray whom He wills, for He alone is mighty and wise. Through this, the true nature of the prophet is established, and thus his role is defined within the limits of this profound truth, ensuring that the human nature of the prophets and their attributes are never confused with the divine essence and its attributes. This, in turn, preserves the pure monotheism of God, free from any shadow of resemblance or comparison. The Surah also contains the fulfillment of God's promise to the messengers and to those who truly believe in them. This promise is fulfilled both in this world through victory and inheritance, and in the hereafter through the punishment of the deniers and the reward of the believers. The Surah vividly portrays this great truth at the end of the earthly struggle between the messengers and their disbelieving nations. And those who disbelieved said to their messengers, "We will surely drive you out of our land, or you will return to our religion." So their sustainer revealed to them, "We shall surely destroy the wrongdoers, and we shall certainly cause you to dwell in the land after them. This is for those who fear standing before me and fear my warning." They sought victory, and every obstinate tyrant was disappointed. It also depicts this truth in the scenes of the day of resurrection. And those who believed and did righteous deeds were admitted to gardens beneath which rivers flow, abiding therein by the permission of their sustainer. Their greeting therein will be peace. And you will see the sinners on that day, bound together in chains. Their garments will be of pitch, and the fire will cover their faces. It further illustrates this truth through the parables given to both the faithful and the disbelievers. Do you not see how God presents the example of a good word like a good tree, whose root is firmly fixed and whose branches reach into the sky? It yields its fruit at all times by the permission of its sustainer. And God presents examples for the people so that they may remember. And the example of a bad word is like a bad tree, uprooted from the surface of the earth, having no stability. God keeps firm those who believe with the firm word in worldly life and in the hereafter, and God sends astray the wrongdoers, and God does what he wills. The example of those who disbelieve in their sustainer. Their works are like ashes scattered by a violent wind on a stormy day. They're unable to gain anything from what they earned. That is the farthest straying. As for the two overarching truths that dominate the surah and are in harmony with the shadow of Ibrahim, the patriarch, the grateful servant, the tender-hearted and ever turning to God, they are the truth of the unity of the message and the messengers, and their unified call as one nation confronting the Jahiliyyah that denied God's religion, and the truth of God's grace upon humanity, both generally and specifically upon the chosen ones among them. We will elaborate on these two truths here. The first truth is highlighted in a unique way within the surah's discourse. Some previous surahs have emphasized the unity of the message by showing how each messenger would come to his people, deliver the same message, receive the same rejection, and then the disbelievers would face the same consequences, either in this world or in the hereafter. A prime example of this style is found in Surah Al-Araf and Surah Hud. However, in Surah Ibrahim, the narrative gathers all the prophets in one line and all the disbelievers in another. The battle between them takes place on earth, but it does not end there. It continues into the day of judgment. We witness the nation of the prophets and the nation of Jahiliyyah standing together in one arena despite the differences in time and place. Time and place become fleeting, transient displays, while the great truth of faith and disbelief, the ultimate reality of the universe, looms larger than time and place. Has not the news reached you of those before you, the people of Noah, Ad, and Thamud, and those after them? None knows them but God. Their messengers came to them with clear proofs, but they thrust their hands into their mouths and said, "Indeed, we disbelieve in that with which you have been sent, and we are in disquieting doubt concerning that to which you invite us." Their messengers said, "Can there be any doubt about God, the originator of the heavens and the earth? He calls you that he may forgive you your sins and give you respite for a specified term." They said, "You are but human beings like us. You wish to turn us away from what our forefathers worshipped, so bring us clear authority." Their messengers said to them, "We are indeed human beings like you, but God bestows his grace upon whomsoever he wills of his servants." It is not for us to bring you authority except by the permission of God, and upon God let the believers rely. And why should we not rely upon God when He has guided us in our ways? And we shall surely bear with patience whatever harm you may cause us. And upon God let those who trust place their trust. And those who disbelieved said to their messengers, "We will surely drive you out of our land, or you will return to our religion." So their sustainer revealed to them, "We shall surely destroy the wrongdoers, and we shall certainly cause you to dwell in the land after them. This is for those who fear standing before me and fear my warning." And they sought victory. But every obstinate tyrant was disappointed. Beyond him is hell, and he will be given a drink of festering water. He will gulp it, but will hardly be able to swallow it. Death will come to him from every side, yet he will not die. And beyond him is a heavy punishment. Here generations from the time of Noah gather, and the prophets gather, and time and place dissolve. The great truth emerges. The message is one, the objections of the disbelievers are one, the victory granted by God to the believers is one, the inheritance given to the righteous is one, and the humiliation and defeat of the tyrants are one, as is the punishment awaiting them in the hereafter. This is reflected in the similarity between God's words to Muhammad, peace be upon him, a book which we have sent down to you so that you may bring forth mankind from darkness into light, and his words regarding Musa, peace be upon him. Indeed, we sent Musa with our signs, saying, "Lead your people out of darkness into light." The battle between disbelief and faith does not end here. The narrative continues into the realm of the hereafter, and the scenes of the day of resurrection are vividly depicted in the surah. Here are some of these scenes, and they will all appear before God, and then the weak will say to those who were arrogant, "Indeed, we were your followers, so will you avail us anything against the punishment of God?" They will say, "If God had guided us, we would have guided you. It is all the same for us whether we are impatient or patient. There is for us no escape." And Satan will say, when the matter has been decided, "Indeed, God promised you the promise of truth, and I promised you, but I betrayed you. But I had no authority over you, except that I called you, and you responded to me. So do not blame me, but blame yourselves. I cannot help you, nor can you help me. Indeed, I reject your association of me with God before. Indeed, for the wrongdoers is a painful punishment. But those who believed and did righteous deeds will be admitted to gardens beneath which rivers flow, abiding therein by the permission of their sustainer. Their greeting therein will be peace. And do not think that God is unaware of what the wrongdoers do. He only delays them for a day when eyes will stare in horror. They will be racing ahead, their heads raised up, their gaze not returning to them, and their hearts empty. And they had devised their scheme, and with God rests their scheme, even if their scheme could move mountains. So do not think that God will fail in his promise to his messengers. Indeed, God is mighty, possessor of retribution. On the day when the earth will be replaced by another earth, and the heavens will also be replaced. And they will appear before God, the One, the Overpowering, and you will see the criminals that day bound together in chains. Their garments will be of pitch, and the fire will cover their faces. All of these verses point to the fact that this is one continuous battle that begins in this world and concludes in the hereafter, with each stage complementing the other, without interruption or separation. The parables that begin in this world and end in the hereafter also help to highlight the features of this struggle and its ultimate outcomes. The parable of the good word being like a good tree, representing the tree of prophethood, faith and goodness, and the bad word being like a bad tree, representing the tree of Jahiliyyah, falsehood, denial, evil and tyranny. As for the second truth, which concerns blessings, gratitude and ingratitude, it permeates the entire surah, scattered throughout its discourse. God enumerates his blessings upon all humanity, believers and disbelievers, righteous and sinful, virtuous and wicked, obedient and rebellious. It is a mercy from God and a mark of his generosity and grace that he grants his blessings to the disbelievers, the wicked and the rebellious, just as he does to the believers, the virtuous and the obedient, perhaps that they might show gratitude. These blessings are displayed in the grandest and most prominent aspects of the universe, framed within the context of the great scenes of existence. God is the one who created the heavens and the earth, and sent down rain from the sky, and brought forth thereby fruits as provision for you, and subjected for you the ships to sail through the sea by his command, and subjected for you the rivers. And he subjected for you the sun and the moon, both constantly pursuing their courses, and subjected for you the night and the day. And he gave you from all that you asked of him. And if you were to count the favours of God, you could not enumerate them. Verily, humankind is indeed unjust and ungrateful. In sending messengers to humanity, God bestows a blessing that equals or surpasses all others. A book which we have sent down to you so that you may bring forth mankind from darkness into light. The light of guidance is the greatest of God's blessings, for it illuminates the inner being of humankind and the entire universe as perceived by the heart. Thus, the mission of Musa among his people was the same as the mission of the other messengers as clarified by the Surah. The collective voice of the messengers He calls you that he may forgive you your sins. The call for forgiveness is a blessing akin to the blessing of light, and is closely related to it. Within this discourse on blessings, Musa reminds his people of God's grace upon them. And recall when Musa said to his people, "Remember the favour of God upon you when he saved you from the people of Pharaoh, who afflicted you with the worst torment, slaughtering your sons and keeping your women alive, and in that was a great trial from your sustainer." In this context, God's promise to the messengers is mentioned. So their sustainer revealed to them, "We shall surely destroy the wrongdoers, and we shall certainly cause you to dwell in the land after them. This is for those who fear standing before me and fear my warning." This is one of God's countless great blessings. The surah also emphasizes the truth that blessings increase with gratitude. And remember when your sustainer proclaimed, "If you are grateful, I will surely increase you in favor. But if you deny, indeed, my punishment is severe." It also clarifies that God is not in need of gratitude or the grateful. If you disbelieve, you and whoever is on the earth entirely, indeed God is free of need, praiseworthy. The surah affirms that humankind in general does not show due gratitude for God's blessings. And if you tried to count the favours of God, you could never enumerate them. Verily, humankind is indeed unjust and ungrateful. But those who reflect upon God's signs, whose hearts are open to them, display patience in hardship and gratitude in ease. Indeed, in that are signs for every patient and grateful person. Patience and gratitude are embodied in the person of Ibrahim, who, in a moment of deep devotion and trembling supplication at the sacred house, exhibits nothing but praise and gratitude, patience and prayer. And recall when Ibrahim said, "My sustainer, make this city secure and keep me and my sons away from worshipping idols. My sustainer, indeed they have led astray many among the people. So whoever follows me, then he is of me, and whoever disobeys me, indeed, you are still forgiving and merciful. Our sustainer, I have settled some of my descendants in an uncultivated valley near your sacred house, our sustainer, that they may establish prayer. So make hearts among the people inclined toward them, and provide for them from the fruits that they might be grateful. Our sustainer, indeed, you know what we conceal and what we declare, and nothing is hidden from God on the earth or in the heaven." Praise be to God, who has granted me in old age Ismail and Ishak. Indeed, my sustainer is the hearer of supplication. My sustainer, make me an establisher of prayer and from my descendants. Our sustainer, and accept my supplication. Our sustainer, forgive me and my parents and the believers the day the account is established. Because grace, gratitude for it, and ingratitude towards it are central themes of the surah, the expressions and commentary therein are aligned with this overarching atmosphere, and provide them with fruits that they might be grateful. Indeed, in this are signs for every patient, grateful person. Have you not considered those who exchanged the grace of God for disbelief and led their people to the abode of ruin? Remember the blessings of God upon you. Praise be to God, who has granted me, despite my old age, Ishmael and Isaac. And in the Prophet's responses to the deniers who object to their human nature, it is said, "But God bestows his grace upon whom he wills, from among his servants." Thus, The grace of God is emphasized in a way that harmonizes with the theme of the surah, an atmosphere of grace, favor, gratitude, and ingratitude. In this manner, the verbal expression aligns with the general tone of the surah as part of the artistic harmony found throughout the Qur'an. The surah is divided into two closely interwoven sections. 1. The first section details the true nature of the message and the true nature of the messenger. It portrays the struggle between the people of the prophets and the deniers, both in this world and in the hereafter, concluding with the parable of the good word and the evil word. 2. The second section speaks of God's blessings upon humanity and the contrast between those who reject these blessings with arrogance and those who believe and show gratitude, with the first example being Abraham. It depicts the fate of the unjust, those who are ungrateful for God's blessings, through a series of vivid and powerful scenes from the Day of Judgment, full of movement and life. The surah concludes in a manner that aligns with its opening. This is a message for all mankind, so that they may be warned thereby, and that they may know that He is the one and only God, and that those who possess understanding may reflect. So let us proceed with the first section in its context. Alif Lam Ra, a book which we have revealed to you, that you might bring forth mankind from darkness into light, by the permission of their sustainer to the path of the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. 1. God, to whom belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, and woe to the disbelievers for a severe punishment. 2. Those who prefer the life of this world over the hereafter and hinder from the path of God, seeking to make it crooked, those are in far-reaching error. 3. And we did not send any messenger except speaking in the language of his people to make things clear for them. Then God lets go astray whom he wills, and guides whom he wills, and he is the exalted in might, the wise. 4. And we certainly sent Moses with our signs, saying, Bring your people out from darkness into light, and remind them of the days of God. Indeed, in that are signs for every patient, grateful person. 5. And recall when Moses said to his people, Remember the favor of God upon you when he saved you from the people of Pharaoh, who were afflicting you with the worst torment, slaughtering your sons and keeping your women alive. And in that was a great trial from your sustainer. 6. And remember when your sustainer proclaimed, If you are grateful, I will surely increase you in favor, but if you deny, indeed, my punishment is severe. 7. And Moses said, If you should disbelieve, you and whoever is on the earth entirely, indeed, God is free of need and praiseworthy. 8. Has there not reached you the news of those before you, the people of Noah, Ad, Thamud, and those after them? None knows them but God. Their messengers came to them with clear proofs, but they put their hands to their mouths and said, Indeed, we disbelieve in that with which you have been sent, and indeed we are in disquieting doubt about that to which you invite us. 9. Their messengers said, Can there be any doubt about God, creator of the heavens and earth? He invites you that he may forgive you of your sins and defer you to a specified term. They said, You are not but men like us who wish to turn us away from what our fathers were worshipping. So bring us a clear authority. 10. Their messengers said to them, We are only men like you, but God bestows his grace upon whom he wills from among his servants. And it is not for us to bring you proof except by the permission of God. And upon God let the believers rely. 11. And why should we not rely upon God while he has guided us to our ways? And we will surely be patient over whatever harm you cause us. And upon God let those who would rely indeed rely. 12. And those who disbelieved said to their messengers, We will surely drive you out of our land, or you must return to our religion. So their sustainer inspired to them, We will surely destroy the wrongdoers. 13. And we will surely cause you to dwell in the land after them. That is for he who fears my position and fears my threat. 14. And they sought victory, and disappointment befell every obstinate tyrant. 15. Before him is hell, and he will be given a drink of purulent water. 16. He will gulp it, but will hardly be able to swallow it, and death will come to him from every side, yet he will not die. And before him is a harsh punishment. 17. The example of those who disbelieve in their sustainer is that their deeds are like ashes blown away by a strong wind on a stormy day. They are unable to keep from what they earned a single thing. That is what is extreme loss. 18. Have you not seen how God created the heavens and the earth in truth? If he wills, he can remove you and produce a new creation. 19. And that is not difficult for God. 20. And they will all appear before God, and the weak will say to those who are arrogant, indeed, we were your followers, so can you avert from us anything of God's punishment? They will say, if God had guided us, we would have guided you. It is all the same for us, whether we are patient or impatient. There is no escape for us. 21. And Satan will say when the matter has been concluded, indeed, God had promised you the promise of truth. And I promised you, but I betrayed you. But I had no authority over you except that I invited you and you responded to me. So do not blame me, but blame yourselves. I cannot come to your aid, nor can you come to my aid. Indeed, I deny your association of me with God before. Indeed, for the wrongdoers is a painful punishment. 22. And those who believed and did righteous deeds will be admitted to gardens beneath which rivers flow, abiding therein by permission of their sustainer. Their greeting therein will be peace. 23. Have you not seen how God presents an example? A good word is like a good tree. Its roots are firm and its branches are in the sky. 24. It produces its fruit all the time by the permission of its sustainer, and God presents examples for the people that perhaps they will be reminded. 25. And the example of a bad word is like a bad tree, uprooted from the surface of the earth, having no stability. 26. God keeps firm those who believe with the firm word in worldly life and in the hereafter. And God sends astray the wrongdoers, and God does what he wills. 27. Alif Lam Ra, a book which we have revealed to you that you might bring forth mankind from darkness into light by the permission of their sustainer to the path of the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. 28. God to whom belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. And woe to the disbelievers for a severe punishment. 29. Those who prefer the life of this world over the hereafter and hinder from the path of God, seeking to make it crooked, those are in far-reaching error. 30. And we did not send any messenger except speaking in the language of his people to make things clear for them. Then God lets go astray whom he wills and guides whom he wills, and he is the exalted in might, the wise. 31. This book, composed of these very letters, is a book that we have sent down to you. You did not create it yourself. We have sent it to you for a purpose. To bring humanity out of darkness into light. To bring this humanity out of darkness. Darkness of illusions and myths. Darkness of traditions and customs. Darkness of confusion in the wilderness of multiple deities. And darkness of disordered perceptions, values and standards. To bring humanity out of all these layers of darkness into light. Light that reveals these obscurities. Light that illuminates the world of the soul and the realm of thought, and then light that shines upon the realities of life, values and traditions. Faith in God is a light that radiates within the heart, filling this human existence, this being made of dense clay and the breath of God's Spirit. If this radiance is absent, and if this illumination is extinguished, the clay becomes dark, transformed into mere flesh and blood like that of a beast, for flesh and blood alone belong to the earth and its material. It is only that divine breath which stirs within, polished by faith, that keeps it from sinking into the darkness of mere matter. Faith in God is a light that enlightens the soul, showing it the path, a path clear and straight towards God, unclouded by confusion or veiled by doubt, free from the mist of desires or the fog of ambitions. When the soul sees the path, it walks upon it with certainty, without stumbling, wavering, or hesitating. Faith in God is a light that brightens life itself. Suddenly all human beings are seen as equal servants, bound by the tie of servitude to God, their allegiance pure for Him alone. There are no divisions into masters and slaves. They are united with the universe and all that it contains through the bond of knowledge, knowledge of the law that governs the cosmos and all within it. Thus they live in harmony, at peace with the universe and all that resides within it. Faith in God is light, the light of justice, the light of freedom, the light of knowledge. the light of companionship with God and contentment with his justice, mercy and wisdom in good times and bad. This contentment brings patience in adversity and gratitude in prosperity, illuminated by the understanding of wisdom behind every trial. Faith in God as the one and only is a comprehensive way of life, not merely a belief that fills the conscience with light. It is a complete system that stands firmly on the foundation of servitude to God alone, rejecting any lesser authority rising above the dominion of human rulers. In this system lies a profound harmony with human nature and its true needs, filling life with happiness, light, tranquility and peace. It also provides stability, shielding individuals and societies from the turmoil and confusion that arise when they are subject to the rule of men, their flawed systems of government, economy and social order, their ethics, and even their customs and traditions. This system, moreover, preserves human energy from being wasted in the idolization of men and the constant praise and glorification of despots, to bring humanity out of darkness into light. Behind this brief expression are vast horizons, profound truths in the realms of thought and feelings, in life and reality, which no human expression can fully convey. It can only point toward them. To bring humanity out of darkness into light by the permission of their sustainer. For the messenger can do no more than convey the message. His duty is only to make things clear. As for bringing people out of darkness into light, that happens by the permission of God, according to his will and his eternal laws. The messenger is but a messenger, to bring humanity out of darkness into light, by the permission of their sustainer, to the path of the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. The path here is substituted for light, and God's path is his way, his law, and the order that governs the universe. The light guides to this path, or rather the light is the path. This is a more powerful meaning. The light that shines within the soul is the same light that illuminates the universe, the very law, the cosmic order, and the divine legislation. The soul that lives within this light sees clearly, perceives correctly, and acts rightly. It is on a straight path, the path of the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. The one who possesses might, who is dominant, who is in control, and who is praised and thanked. Here, power is emphasized to warn those who disbelieve, while gratitude is highlighted to remind those who are grateful. Then follows the introduction to God, God to whom belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Whoever seeks guidance and follows it will benefit himself. There is no need to mention such people here. The discourse moves directly to warn the disbelievers, threatening them with woe and severe punishment for their ingratitude towards this blessing, the blessing of sending the messenger with the book to bring them from darkness into light. This is the greatest blessing, one that no human gratitude can fully repay, and how much worse it is when met with ingratitude. And woe to the disbelievers for a severe punishment. And then the reason for their rejection of God's grace is revealed. Those who prefer the life of this world over the hereafter, and who hinder others from the path of God, seeking to make it crooked, those are in far-reaching error. Preferring this worldly life over the hereafter conflicts with the demands of faith and is incompatible with walking the straight path. But there is no such conflict when one prefers the hereafter, for in that case, the affairs of this world are also set right, and worldly pleasures become moderate, pursued with the remembrance of God. Thus, there is no contradiction between seeking the hereafter and enjoying the good things of this life. Those who turn their hearts toward the hereafter do not lose the pleasures of this life, contrary to what perverted imaginations might suggest. In Islam, the rectification of the hereafter requires the rectification of this life. Faith in God demands good stewardship of the earth, and good stewardship of the earth involves its cultivation and the enjoyment of its blessings. There is no suspension of life in Islam in anticipation of the hereafter. Rather, life is to be enriched with truth, justice and uprightness, seeking God's pleasure and preparing for the hereafter. This is Islam. But those who prefer the life of this world over the hereafter cannot achieve their goals, whether it is hoarding the earth's resources, earning illicit gains, exploiting people, or deceiving and enslaving them, if they live in the light of faith and under the guidance of its upright path. Thus they hinder others from the path of God, blocking themselves and others, seeking to make it crooked, devoid of rectitude or justice. Only when they succeed in diverting themselves and others from God's straight and just path can they engage in oppression, tyranny, deceit and corruption, achieving their desire to monopolize the earth's resources, accumulate unlawful wealth, indulge in debased pleasures, and impose their dominion over others without resistance or objection. The path of faith is a safeguard for life and for the living from the greed and selfishness of those who prefer the life of this world over the hereafter and seek to monopolize the goods of this life. And we did not send any messenger except speaking in the language of his people to make things clear for them. This is a universal blessing for all humanity in every message. For the messenger must be sent in the language of his people so that he can make things clear to them, so that they can understand him, and thus the purpose of the message is fulfilled. The prophet, peace be upon him, was sent speaking the language of his people, even though he was a messenger to all mankind, because his people were those who would carry his message to all the peoples of the earth. His lifetime was limited, and he was commanded to first call his people so that Arabia might be purified for Islam. Thus, the Arabian Peninsula would become a cradle from which the carriers of Muhammad's message would go forth to all corners of the earth. And indeed, this is what happened. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was called to the presence of his sustainer after Islam had reached the farthest limits of the peninsula, and the army of Usama had been dispatched to its outermost regions, though the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed away before it set out. Indeed, the Prophet had sent letters beyond the peninsula, inviting people to Islam in fulfillment of his universal mission. Yet according to God's wisdom, and in accordance with the limited span of human life, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was to call his people first in their own language, and the message would reach all of humanity through the carriers of this message to the world. And so it came to pass. There was no contradiction between his universal mission and his message being delivered in the language of his people, according to God's plan and the realities of life. And never have we sent a messenger except in the language of his people, so that he might make the truth clear to them. Then God lets go astray whom he wills, and guides whom he wills. The mission of every messenger, of any messenger, ends with the act of clarification. As for what follows thereafter, whether it be guidance or misguidance, that lies beyond his power and is not subject to his will. It is solely the domain of God, who has ordained a law that his absolute will has approved. Thus, whoever follows the path of misguidance goes astray, and whoever follows the path of guidance arrives at the destination. Both of these outcomes are part of God's will, in line with the law he has established for life. And he is the Almighty, the Wise, he who holds power over the affairs of humankind and life, directing them with wisdom and precision. Things are not left to chance without purpose or guidance. Thus was the message of Moses delivered in the language of his people. And we sent Moses with our signs, bring your people out of the darkness into the light and remind them of the days of God. Surely in these reminders there are signs for every patient, grateful soul. And when Moses said to his people, remember the blessings of God upon you, when he saved you from the people of Pharaoh, who inflicted upon you the worst of sufferings, slaughtering your sons and sparing your women, and in that there was a tremendous trial from your sustainer. And when your sustainer proclaimed, if you are grateful, I will surely increase my blessings for you. But if you are ungrateful, then surely my punishment is severe. Moses said, even if you and all who are on the earth were to disbelieve, indeed God is free of all want, worthy of all praise. The expression here unifies the command given to Moses with that given to Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon both of them, in harmony with the style of the surah's presentation, which we have mentioned earlier. Thus, the command there is to bring people out of the darkness into the light, and the command here is, bring your people out of the darkness into the light. The first command is for all people, while the second is for Moses' people specifically. But the ultimate aim is the same. Bring your people out of the darkness into the light and remind them of the days of God. And all days are God's days. But here the intention is to remind them of those particular days in which something extraordinary or exceptional, be it a blessing or a punishment, becomes manifest to human beings or to a community among them, as will be seen later in Moses' reminders to his people. He reminded them of their own days as well as the days of the peoples of Noah, Ad, Tamud, and those who came after them. These are the days. In this there are signs for every patient, grateful soul. For in these days there is hardship, which is a sign for patience, and there is grace, which is a sign for gratitude. And the patient, grateful soul is the one who perceives these signs, understands their deeper meanings, and finds in them lessons and reminders, just as such a soul finds in them a source of solace and remembrance. And so Moses proceeded to fulfill his mission, reminding his people, and remember when Moses said to his people, "Remember God's favor upon you when he saved you from the people of Pharaoh, who inflicted upon you the worst of sufferings, slaughtering your sons and sparing your women, and in that there was a tremendous trial from your sustainer." He was reminding them of God's grace upon them, the grace of salvation from the torment they had suffered at the hands of Pharaoh's people, who subjected them to a continuous and relentless torment. Among its most prominent forms was the slaughter of their male children and the sparing of their women, to prevent their strength from multiplying and to ensure their weakness and subjugation. God's deliverance from this state was indeed a favor worth remembering, and remembering it is a prelude to gratitude. And in that there was a tremendous trial from your sustainer, a trial by torment first, to test their patience, endurance, and determination to resist and strive for liberation. For patience does not mean merely enduring humiliation and suffering. It means enduring suffering without breaking, without spiritual defeat, while maintaining the will to break free and the readiness to stand against oppression and tyranny. Otherwise, what credit is there in a patience that is merely submission to degradation and humiliation? And then there was a trial by salvation, to test their gratitude, their acknowledgement of God's grace, and their steadfastness on the path of guidance in exchange for that deliverance. Moses continues his explanation to his people, after reminding them of their days and after pointing them toward the purpose behind both suffering and salvation, that purpose being patience in the face of suffering and gratitude for deliverance. He proceeds to clarify for them what God has ordained as the consequence of gratitude and ingratitude. And when your sustainer proclaimed, "If you are grateful, I will surely increase my blessings for you, but if you are ungrateful, then surely my punishment is severe." And here we stand before this great truth, the truth of an increase in blessings through gratitude and the severe punishment that follows ingratitude. We stand before this truth, feeling a deep reassurance in our hearts, for it is a promise from God, and His promise is true. It must be fulfilled, no matter what. If we wish to see its manifestation in life and to search for its tangible causes, we do not need to look far. Gratitude for blessings is a sign of the soundness of the human soul's inner compass. For goodness is naturally met with gratitude, which is the instinctive response of a pure heart. This is one aspect. The other is that a soul that is grateful to God for His blessings remains mindful of Him in the way it uses these blessings, without arrogance, without elevating itself above others, and without using those blessings to harm or corrupt. Both of these traits purify the soul, drive it toward righteous action, and inspire it to use God's blessings in ways that increase and bless them, while winning the goodwill of people and the pleasure of their owner, who in turn becomes their helper. This fosters harmonious relations within society, allowing wealth to grow in safety. These are some of the outward, tangible reasons we can observe in life. Yet even without these reasons, God's promise alone is enough to reassure the believer, whether they grasp the reasons or not, for it is a true promise from God. Ingratitude for God's blessings may take the form of failing to acknowledge them or of denying that God is their source, attributing them instead to one's own knowledge, skill, effort, or striving, as if these abilities themselves were not blessings from God. It may also take the form of misusing those blessings in arrogance, pride, indulgence in base desires, or acts of corruption. All of this constitutes ingratitude for God's blessings, and severe punishment may involve the removal of those blessings altogether, either by stripping them away or by rendering them a source of misery for their possessors, who may come to envy those who live without them. Or the punishment may be delayed until its appointed time, either in this world or in the hereafter, as God wills. But it is certain, for ingratitude for God's blessings does not go without consequence. Gratitude does not benefit God in any way, nor does ingratitude harm him. For he is free of all want, and praiseworthy in and of himself, not in need of the praise or gratitude of people for his gifts. Moses said, "Even if you and all who are on the earth were to disbelieve, indeed, God is free of all want, worthy of all praise." It is the well-being of life that is achieved through gratitude. It is the souls of people that are purified by turning to God in gratitude. It is they who become upright by acknowledging goodness and feel secure in their connection to the giver of blessings, no longer fearing the depletion of those blessings or their loss, no longer consumed by regret over what has been spent or lost. For the giver remains, and through gratitude the blessings are increased and multiplied. Moses continues in his explanation and reminders to his people. But now he withdraws from the scene as the grand confrontation unfolds between the community of the prophets and the ignorant masses who reject the messengers and the messages. This is one of the brilliant aspects of Quranic storytelling, where the scenes come to life, shifting from mere narration to a vivid spectacle in which the characters move, speak, and reveal their inner truths and emotions. And now we are brought to the great arena where time and space dissolve. Has there not come to you the news of those who came before you, the people of Noah, Ad, Thamud, and those who came after them, unknown to any but God? Their messengers came to them with clear signs, but they thrust their hands into their mouths and said, "We deny what you have been sent with, and we are in grave doubt concerning that to which you call us." This reminder comes from the words of Moses, yet from this point onward, Moses recedes into the background, as the unfolding story of the messengers and their messages throughout all times continues. It is the story of the messengers and their messages, and the truth of their confrontation with Jahiliyyah, and the ultimate fate of those who reject them, no matter the time or place. It is as though Moses is the narrator who signals the events of the grand narrative, only to let its protagonists speak and act for themselves thereafter. This is one of the Qur'an's methods of storytelling, transforming a recounted tale into a living drama, as we have mentioned earlier. Here we witness the noble messengers in the procession of faith, confronting humanity in all its collective jahiliyyah as the distinctions between generations and peoples vanish. The great truths stand unadorned by the limitations of time and space, just as they exist in the reality of existence beyond the barriers of time and space. Has there not come to you the news of those who came before you, the people of Noah, Ad, Thamud, and those who came after them, unknown to any but God? They are many indeed, and there are others besides those mentioned in the Qur'an, between the time of Thamud and the people of Moses. The narrative here is not concerned with detailing their affairs, for there is a unity in the call of the messengers and a unity in the response they encountered. Their messengers came to them with clear signs unmistakable to any sound mind. But they thrust their hands into their mouths and said, "We deny what you have been sent with, and we are in grave doubt concerning that to which you call us." They thrust their hands into their mouths as one does when trying to amplify their voice, moving their hand back and forth in front of their mouth to create a loud, oscillating sound. The Quranic narrative captures this motion, indicating their loud and brazen denial, their utter shamelessness in publicly proclaiming disbelief, and the crude, graceless gesture that accompanies it, all of which intensify their open rejection of the truth. since what the messengers were calling them to was belief in the oneness of God and his sole dominion over humankind, without any partners from among his creatures. Their doubt in this manifest truth, which is evident to every sound heart and which is attested by the signs of God scattered throughout the universe and manifest in its pages, seems both shocking and ugly. The messengers were appalled by such doubt, with the heavens and the earth as witnesses. Their messengers said, "Is there any doubt concerning God, the originator of the heavens and the earth? How can there be any doubt about God, when the heavens and the earth themselves bear witness to his creative power and his sovereignty?" The messengers said this because the heavens and the earth are two immense and manifest signs, and merely pointing to them suffices to bring the wandering soul back to its senses. There is no need to elaborate further, for the mere mention of them suffices. Then they began to enumerate God's blessings upon humanity, for which he invites them to faith, and his forbearance in granting them time to reflect and turn away from punishment. Is there any doubt concerning God, the originator of the heavens and the earth? He calls you to forgive you for your sins. The call, in essence, is a call to faith, which leads to forgiveness. But the narrative makes the call directly to forgiveness in order to emphasize God's grace and bounty. How strange, then, that a people should be invited to forgiveness, only to respond to the call in this manner. He calls you to forgive you for your sins and to grant you respite until a term appointed. For he, in his infinite mercy, does not demand immediate faith upon receiving the invitation, nor does he inflict immediate punishment upon their disbelief. Rather, he grants them yet another grace, giving them time until an appointed term, either in this life or in the hereafter, so that they may return to their senses and reflect on God's signs and the message of his messengers. This too is a mercy and a grace counted among his blessings. And yet, what is their response to this merciful call from the All-Merciful? Here the people return to their ignorant objections. They said, "You are but mortals like us. You wish to turn us away from what our forefathers worshipped." Instead of taking pride in the fact that God chose one of their own to bear his message, they, in their jahiliyyah, reject this divine election, casting suspicion upon the messengers chosen for this sacred task. They attribute the messenger's call to a mere desire to turn them away from the worship of their ancestors, without even stopping to ask themselves, why would the messengers want to turn them away? And as is typical of the intellectual stagnation that idol worship fosters, they refuse to critically examine what their ancestors worshipped. What was its value, its reality, its worth when scrutinized? And as is typical of such stagnation, they refuse to give any thought to the new message. Instead, they demand a miracle to compel their belief. So bring us a clear authority. The messengers respond not by denying their humanity, but by acknowledging it, while directing their people's attention to the grace of God in selecting his messengers from among mortals, and in granting them what qualifies them to bear the tremendous responsibility of prophethood. Their messengers said, "Indeed, we are but mortals like you, but God bestows his grace on whomever he wills of his servants." The narrative uses the word bestows, yamunnu, in harmony with the surah's atmosphere, which speaks of God's blessings. And among these blessings is this tremendous grace that he bestows on whomever he wills from among his servants. This is a mighty grace, not only for the messengers themselves, but also for humanity at large, which is honoured by the selection of individuals from among them to carry the divine message and to communicate with the heavenly realm. It is a blessing for humanity, as it reminds them of the pure, innate disposition, fitra, that has been clouded over by the debris of worldly desires, bringing them out from darkness into light, and awakening within them the dormant faculties of perception so that they may emerge from lifeless stagnation into the vibrant life of faith. It is also the greatest grace for humanity, in that it liberates them from servitude to other human beings and brings them into servitude to God alone, without any partners. It rescues their dignity and potential from the depths of humiliation and fragmentation, for it is a humiliation for a human being to bow down before another human, and it is a waste of human energy to be harnessed for the deification of a fellow servant. As for the demand for a clear miracle or an overwhelming proof, the messengers clarify for their people that such matters belong to God alone. This is done to help their people differentiate in their muddled perceptions between God's divine essence and their own human natures, and to purify their understanding of God's absolute oneness, free from any confusion between His essence and theirs, or between His attributes and theirs. This is the point at which many idol-worshipping traditions, and even the Christian understanding of Jesus, went astray, confusing divine and human attributes, as occurred when Christianity absorbed elements of Greek, Roman, Egyptian and Indian paganism. The starting point of this deviation was the attribution of miracles to Jesus himself, confusing God's divinity with Jesus' human servitude. It is not for us to bring you any authority except by God's permission, and they affirm that they rely on no power other than His. And upon God alone let the believers rely. This is a statement of eternal truth. The believer relies only on God, their heart turning to none but Him, seeking help from none but Him, and depending on none but His protection. Then the messengers face tyranny with faith, oppression with steadfastness, and they ask with firm resolve, "And why should we not rely on God when He has guided us to our ways? We shall certainly bear with patience whatever harm you may inflict upon us, and upon God alone let those who would rely place their trust." And why should we not rely on God when He has guided us to our ways? It is the voice of one who is fully confident in their position and their path, whose hands are filled with the support of their guardian and helper, who has no doubt that the God who has guided them to the straight path will surely grant them victory and assistance. What does it matter, even if victory in this world does not come, as long as one is assured of guidance along the way? A heart that feels God's hand guiding its steps, leading it along the path, cannot fail to sense His presence, to feel His overwhelming power and dominion. Such a heart cannot waver in its journey, no matter what obstacles may arise, no matter what tyrants may lurk along the path. Thus the messengers, peace and blessings be upon them, tie together their sense of God's guidance and their reliance upon Him in the face of the blatant threats from the tyrants. They declare their unwavering resolve to continue on their path, come what may. And this truth, the truth of the connection in the believer's heart between his sense of being guided by God and the intuitive reliance upon Him, can only be truly felt by hearts that are actively engaged in confronting the tyranny of Jahiliyyah, and that can sense deep within the hand of God as it opens windows of light for them, so they may behold the radiant horizons and breathe the refreshing breeze of faith and knowledge, feeling intimacy and nearness. In such a state, they are unmoved by the threats of earthly tyrants, nor are they tempted by their promises or intimidated by their warnings. They scorn the tyrants of the earth and all the means of oppression and torment they wield. What is there for a heart connected to God in this manner to fear? What could it possibly dread from these mere slaves? And why should we not place our trust in God when He has guided us to our paths? We shall surely endure whatever harm you cause us. We shall endure indeed without retreating, without weakening, without surrendering, without faltering, without wavering in our resolve. We shall not doubt, nor shall we be negligent or stray from our course. And upon God let those who trust place their trust. Here tyranny unveils its true face. It does not argue, nor discuss, nor reflect, nor reason, for it senses its defeat in the face of the victory of faith. It reveals its coarse and brute material force, for that is all that the arrogant possess. And those who disbelieved said to their messengers, "We shall surely drive you out of our land, unless you return to our faith." Here the true nature of the battle between Islam and Jahiliyyah becomes clear. Jahiliyyah does not tolerate Islam having a separate existence from it. It cannot bear the presence of Islam outside its own framework. It will not make peace with Islam, even if Islam were to make peace with it. For Islam must appear as an independent movement, with its own leadership and allegiance, and this is something Jahiliyyah cannot tolerate. Therefore, the disbelievers do not merely demand that the messengers cease their call, they demand that they return to their former faith, that they merge into the ignorant society and dissolve into its structure, so that they no longer have an independent existence. But the nature of this religion forbids it for its followers, and thus the messengers reject and refuse it, for no Muslim should ever return to the fold of ignorant society after God has saved them from it. When brute force reveals its cold, unyielding face, there is no longer room for dialogue, nor for argument, nor for reasoning. And God does not surrender his messengers to Jahiliyyah. The ignorant society, by its very organic nature, does not allow a Muslim element to work within it, unless the efforts of the Muslim, his energy and his labour, are directed towards serving the ignorant society and reinforcing its Jahiliyyah. Those who imagine that they can work for their religion by infiltrating the ignorant society, melting into its systems and structures, are people who do not understand the organic nature of society. This nature compels every individual within it to work for the benefit of that society and its methodology and its worldview. Hence, the noble messengers refuse to return to the faith of their people after God has saved them from it. At this point, the greater power intervenes, striking its decisive and destructive blow, which no human force, no matter how tyrannical, can withstand. And their sustainer inspired them, "We shall surely destroy the wrongdoers, and we shall make you dwell in the land after them. This is for those who fear my station and fear my warning." We must understand that the intervention of the greater power to separate the messengers from their people always comes after the messengers have severed ties with their people, after the believers have refused to return to the faith of their people, after God has saved them from it, after they insist on their distinction by their faith and their independent Islamic community with its own leadership, after they sever their ties with their people on the basis of faith, dividing one people into two distinct nations, different in faith, methodology, leadership and community. At this point, the greater power intervenes to strike its decisive blow, to destroy the tyrants who threaten the believers, and to grant the believers dominion in the land, fulfilling God's promise to his messengers of victory and empowerment. This intervention never occurs while the Muslims are still melting into the ignorant society, working within its frameworks and structures, without being separated from it, without being distinguished by an independent movement and Islamic leadership. And their sustainer inspired them, "We shall surely destroy the wrongdoers." The royal "we" and the emphatic "shall" both have an awe-inspiring resonance in this moment of great significance. We shall destroy the arrogant, the threatening, the polytheists, those who have wronged themselves, wronged the truth, wronged the messengers, and wronged the people with their threats. And we shall make you dwell in the land after them. There is no favoritism here, no arbitrariness. It is simply the just and ongoing law of God. This is for those who fear my station and fear my warning. That dwelling and succession are for those who fear my station, who do not grow haughty, who do not become arrogant, nor do they oppress or tyrannize. They fear my warning, calculating its consequences, avoiding its causes, refraining from corruption on earth and from oppressing people. Thus they merit succession and receive it as their due. And so the small, feeble power, the power of the tyrants, is confronted by the immense, overwhelming power, the power of the Almighty, the dominant. The messenger's mission ends with clear communication and with the severance that distinguishes the believers from the deniers. The arrogant tyrants stand with their weak, insignificant power on one side, and the humble messengers stand on the other, with the power of God, glorified be He, by their side. Both sides call for victory and judgment, and the outcome is as it must be. And they sought victory, but every stubborn tyrant was disappointed. Behind him is hell, and he will be made to drink from a festering fluid. He will gulp it down, but can hardly swallow it, and death will come to him from every side, but he will not die, and beyond him is a harsh torment. The scene here is astonishing. It is the scene of the disappointment of every stubborn tyrant, disappointment in this world. But he stands in this position with hell looming behind him, its image reflected in him, as he is made to drink from the festering fluid, fed to him violently, so that he is forced to gulp it down unwillingly. He can barely swallow it due to its filth and bitterness, with the revulsion and disgust so vividly apparent that we can almost sense them through the words. Death approaches him from every direction, yet he does not die so that his torment may be completed. And beyond him lies a severe punishment. It is indeed a remarkable scene, painting the image of the defeated, disappointed tyrant, with his fate looming behind him in this terrifying, dreadful manner. The word harsh adds a further layer of dread to the scene, harmonizing with the brutal force that these tyrants once used to threaten those who called to truth, goodness and certainty. And in the shadow of this fate comes the comment, a vivid parable that strikes at the disbelievers, followed by a reminder of God's power to obliterate the deniers and replace them with a new creation. All this before the narrative continues with the unfolding scenes on the other stage, as the curtain falls on the final act in this world, revealing the other stage. The example of those who disbelieve in their sustainer is that their deeds are like ashes blown by the wind on a stormy day. They will not be able to retain anything of what they have earned. That is the farthest straying. The image of ashes being blown by the wind on a stormy day is a well-known, familiar scene, vividly portraying the meaning of deeds lost in vain, where their doers cannot grasp hold of them or benefit from them at all. It is a dynamic, stormy scene, stirring the emotions in a way that a mere intellectual expression of wasted deeds could never achieve. This scene also contains an inherent truth about the deeds of the disbelievers, deeds that are not founded upon faith, that are not upheld by the firm bond connecting action with motivation and motivation with God. They are as scattered as dust and ashes without coherence or order. For what matters is not merely the deed itself, but the motive behind it. A deed is merely mechanical movement in which a human is no different from a machine unless it is driven by motive, intention and purpose. Thus, the vivid scene aligns with the profound truth it conveys, delivering its meaning in a captivating, suggestive and emotionally stirring manner. And this is followed by a comment that further reinforces this effect. That is the farthest straying. This comment resonates in harmony with the image of the scattered ashes blown far, far away on a stormy day. Then another image follows, linked to the scattered ashes by a similar tone, as the narrative shifts from past deniers to the deniers among the Quraysh, warning them of their destruction and replacement by a new creation. Do you not see that God created the heavens and the earth in truth? If he wills, he can remove you and bring forth a new creation, and that is not difficult for God. The transition from the subject of faith and disbelief, from the issue of the messengers and Jahiliyyah to the scene of the heavens and the earth, this is a natural transition within the Quranic method, as it is also a natural transition within the human soul's innate disposition, reflecting the divine nature of this Quranic method. For between man's nature and this universe there is a secret, comprehensible language. Man's nature immediately connects with the mystery behind this universe simply by turning toward it and attuning itself to its rhythms and signs. Those who look upon this universe and do not hear its rhythms and its inspirations are individuals whose nature has been crippled. There is a defect in their being that has disabled their innate receptivity, just as the senses can be disabled due to some affliction. Just as the eye is struck with blindness, the ear with deafness, and the tongue with muteness, they are broken instruments, unfit for reception. Even more so, they are unfit for leadership and guidance. Among these are all those who follow materialistic thinking, what they falsely call scientific schools of thought. For science cannot be in harmony with the disabling of man's innate receptivity, nor with the corruption of man's connection with the universe. These are the ones the Qur'an refers to as blind. And no human life can be built upon a doctrine, an opinion, or a system seen by the blind. The creation of the heavens and the earth in truth suggests power as well as stability. For truth is stable and enduring even in the sound of the word itself. This stands in contrast to the scattered ashes blown far away, and it also contrasts with the farthest straying. In light of the fate of the stubborn tyrants in the battle between truth and falsehood comes the threat. If he wills, he can remove you and bring forth a new creation. The one who created the heavens and the earth is capable of replacing this race of people with another race on the earth, or replacing one group with another from among the same race. The image of a people being removed aligns from afar with the image of the scattered ashes vanishing into oblivion. And that is not difficult for God. The creation of the heavens and the earth stands as a witness. The destruction of past deniers stands as a witness. The scattered ashes stand as a distant witness. Indeed, this is the miraculous way in which the Qur'an coordinates its images, scenes and tones. Then we ascend to yet another horizon of Quranic eloquence in depiction, expression and coordination. Moments ago, we were with the obstinate tyrants. Every stubborn tyrant was disappointed. His image was reflected in hell, looming behind him while he was still in this world. Now we find them there, as the narrative continues its grand story, the story of humanity and its messengers, in its final scene. And it is one of the most astonishing scenes of the resurrection, filled with movement, emotion and dialogue between the weak and the arrogant, and between Satan and all of them. And they will appear before God all together. Then the weak will say to those who were arrogant, "We were your followers, can you avail us anything against the punishment of God?" They will say, "If God had guided us, we would have guided you. It is all the same for us whether we despair or are patient. There is no escape for us." And Satan will say when the matter has been concluded, "Indeed, God promised you the promise of truth. And I promised you, but I betrayed you. But I had no authority over you except that I called you, and you responded to me. So do not blame me, but blame yourselves. I cannot help you, nor can you help me. I disavow your association of me with God before. Indeed, for the wrongdoers is a painful punishment." And those who believed and did righteous deeds will be admitted to gardens beneath which rivers flow, abiding therein by the permission of their sustainer, and their greeting therein will be peace. The story has now shifted, the story of the call and the callers and of the deniers and tyrants from the stage of this world to the stage of the hereafter, and they will appear before God altogether. The tyrants, the deniers and their weak followers along with Satan. Then those who believed in the messengers and did righteous deeds. They will all stand all together, exposed. They have always been exposed before God, but now they feel and know that they are exposed, completely uncovered. No veil hides them, no barrier shields them, no protector guards them. They will stand, the stage is filled, the curtain has been raised, and the dialogue begins. Then the weak will say to those who were arrogant, "We were your followers. Can you avail us anything against the punishment of God?" The weak are still weak. They are the ones who abandoned the most precious quality of humankind when they relinquished their personal freedom in thought, belief and direction, making themselves followers of the arrogant and the tyrants. They submitted to the servitude of other human beings instead of submitting to God. Weakness is not an excuse. It is the crime itself. For God does not want anyone to be weak, as he calls all people to his protection. Where they can find strength, for all strength belongs to God. God does not want anyone to relinquish his share of freedom, the very quality that distinguishes and honours him as a human being, whether willingly or unwillingly. No material power, no matter how great, can enslave a person who desires freedom and clings to his human dignity. The most such power can do is control the body, inflicting harm, torture, imprisonment and shackles. But the soul, the conscience, the mind, none can imprison or oppress it unless its owner surrenders it to imprisonment and oppression. Who has the power to make the weak follow the arrogant in belief, thought and behaviour? Who has the power to make the weak submit to other than God, when God alone is their creator, provider and sustainer? No one. No one but their own weak selves. They are weak not because they are materially weaker than the tyrants, nor because they have less wealth, status or position. No, these are merely external appearances, and in themselves they do not constitute the weakness that defines the weak. They are weak because of the weakness in their souls, in their hearts, in their honour, and in their pride, in the most precious quality of being human. The weak are the majority, and the tyrants are the minority. So what is it that subjugates the majority to the minority? What is it that subjugates them? It is the weakness of the spirit, the collapse of resolve, the absence of dignity, and the internal surrender of the honor that God has bestowed upon humanity. The tyrants cannot subjugate the masses unless the masses desire subjugation. They are always capable of standing against the tyrants if they choose. It is the will that is lacking in these herds. Indeed, humiliation only arises from a predisposition to humiliation within the souls of the humiliated, and it is this predisposition that the tyrants depend upon. The humiliated ones, now on the stage of the hereafter, in their weakness and their subservience to the arrogant, ask, "We were your followers. Can you avail us anything against the punishment of God? We followed you, and now we have ended up in this painful fate. Will you help us in any way against the punishment of God? Or perhaps, having seen the punishment, they are now about to rebuke the arrogant for leading them in this way, exposing them to this torment." The narrative recounts their words, which carry the mark of humiliation in any case. The arrogant ones will respond to that question. They will say, "Had God guided us, we would indeed have guided you. It is all the same for us whether we despair or endure with patience. There is no escape for us." And this response reveals their frustration and distress. Had God guided us, we would indeed have guided you. So why do you blame us when we and you are on the same path, heading toward the same fate? We were not guided, and therefore we led you astray. Had God guided us, we would have guided you to the path of righteousness, just as we led you in our error to misguidance. They ascribe both their guidance and their misguidance to God. Now, in this moment, they acknowledge his power, whereas before they denied it and arrogantly sustain it over the weak, as though they feared no reckoning from the all-powerful, the supreme. Now they seek to evade the responsibility for their misguidance and the leading astray of others by attributing everything to God. But God does not command people to go astray, as he says, "Indeed, God does not command indecency." And so they subtly reproach the weak, informing them that despair is as useless as patience. The punishment is now certain, and neither despair nor patience will avail them. The time has passed when despair over punishment could have led the misguided back to righteousness, and when patience through hardship could have invited the mercy of God. Everything has ended, and there is no escape. It is all the same for us whether we despair or endure with patience. There is no escape for us. The matter has been settled, the argument is over, the conversation has fallen silent. And here on the stage, we witness something astonishing. We see Satan, the whisperer of temptation, the guide of the misguided. We see him now, in this hour, donning the garb of a priest, or perhaps the garb of Satan himself. He now assumes a satanic posture before both the weak and the arrogant, with words that may be even harsher for them than the punishment itself. And Satan will say, when the matter has been concluded, "Indeed, God promised you the promise of truth, and I promised you, but I betrayed you. I had no authority over you except that I invited you, and you responded to me. So do not blame me, but blame yourselves. I cannot save you, nor can you save me. Indeed, I reject your former association of me with God. Verily, the wrongdoers will have a painful punishment." God, indeed, Satan is truly Satan. His personality is now revealed in its fullness, just as the personalities of the weak and the arrogant were revealed in this conversation. It is Satan who whispered into their hearts, who enticed them to disobedience, who adorned disbelief for them and turned them away from hearing the divine call. And now he speaks to them, delivering a cruel and piercing blow, one they cannot ward off, because the matter is already settled. He says now, after it is too late, "God promised you the promise of truth, and I promised you, but I betrayed you." Then he wounds them once more by reminding them that they responded to his invitation, even though he had no power over them. They had abandoned their own personalities, forgotten their ancient enmity with Satan, and responded to his false call, turning away from the truth of God's call. "I had no authority over you except that I invited you, and you responded to me." Then he rebukes them and calls upon them to rebuke themselves. He scolds them for having obeyed him. "So do not blame me, but blame yourselves. Then he abandons them, washing his hands of them, despite having previously promised them, given them false hopes, and whispered to them that no one could defeat them. But now in this hour he will not answer their cries, just as they will not answer his. I cannot save you, nor can you save me. There is no bond between us, no loyalty. Then he disavows their associating him with God, and he disclaims all participation in their idolatry. Indeed, I reject your former association of me with God. Finally, he concludes his satanic sermon with a crushing blow delivered upon his followers. Verily, the wrongdoers will have a painful punishment. Oh, how satanic Satan truly is! And what a miserable fate for his followers, who heeded his call to misguidance, while the messengers called them to God, and they denied and rejected them. Before the curtain falls, we glimpse, on the other side, that believing community, the victorious people, the saved nation. And those who believed and did righteous deeds will be admitted to gardens beneath which rivers flow, abiding therein by the permission of their sustainer. Their greeting therein will be peace. And the curtain falls. What a scene! And what an ending to the story of the call and the callers, with the deniers and the tyrants. In the shadow of this story, with all of its chapters, the chapter in this world where the nation of the messengers stood against the oppressive Jahiliyyah, and they sought victory, but every stubborn tyrant was disappointed. Behind him is hell, and he will be made to drink from a festering fluid. He will gulp it, but can hardly swallow it, and death will come to him from every direction. But he will not die, and beyond him is a harsh torment. And the chapter in the hereafter, where we witness that remarkable scene, the scene of the arrogant ones, the weak, and Satan with that strange conversation. In the shadow of this story, with the fates of the righteous nation and the wicked faction, God strikes a parable of the good word and the evil word, to illustrate his ongoing law in the matter of good and evil in this life, a conclusion as though the narrator were commenting on the story after the curtain has fallen. Have you not seen how God strikes a parable? A good word is like a good tree, its roots are firm, and its branches are in the sky. It gives its fruit at all times by the permission of its sustainer. And God strikes parables for mankind so that they may remember. And the parable of an evil word is like an evil tree. Uprooted from the surface of the earth, it has no stability. Indeed, God will establish firmly those who believe with the firm word in this world and in the hereafter. And God lets the wrongdoers go astray. And God does what he wills. The image of the good word as a good tree, with its firm roots and its branches reaching into the sky, and the image of the evil word as an evil tree, uprooted from the surface of the earth with no stability. These images are drawn from the atmosphere of this context, from the story of the prophets and the deniers, and the specific fates of both groups. The tree of prophethood is clear here, and the shade of Abraham, the father of the prophets, rests upon it, as it yields its good fruits from time to time, a prophet from among the prophets, bearing forth faith, goodness, and vitality. Yet the parable, despite its harmony with the atmosphere of the surah and the story, reaches farther horizons, covers broader expanses, and delves deeper into the truth. Indeed, the good word, the word of truth, is like a good tree, firmly rooted, towering aloft and bearing fruit. It is steadfast, unaffected by storms, unshaken by the winds of falsehood, and impervious to the axes of tyranny, even if, at times, some may imagine that it is exposed to annihilating danger. It rises high, looking down upon evil, oppression, and tyranny from above, even if, at times, some may imagine that falsehood crowds it in the sky. Its fruits never cease, for its seeds are constantly sprouting in the hearts of many, moment after moment. And the evil word, the word of falsehood, is like an evil tree. It may grow wild, rise tall, and spread its branches. Some may think it is larger and stronger than the good tree, but it remains inflated and fragile, with its roots near the surface of the earth, as though it were lying on its surface. And it is only a matter of time before it is uprooted from the earth, for it has no stability and no endurance. This is not just a parable being told, nor merely a consolation for the righteous and encouragement for them. It is the reality of life itself, even if its fulfillment is delayed at times. True goodness never dies, nor does it wither away. no matter how much evil crowds its path. And evil never survives for long, except while it consumes some of the goodness mixed with it, for rarely does pure evil exist. And when it consumes all the goodness within it, leaving no trace of it behind, it collapses and crumbles, no matter how large and lofty it may have appeared. Goodness is goodness, and evil is evil. And God strikes parables for mankind so that they may remember. These parables find their confirmation in the reality of the world, though people often forget this in the clamour of life. In the shade of the firmly rooted tree, the metaphor itself contributing to the sense of firmness and stability, we see it drawn as, its roots are firm and its branches are in the sky. It stands before the eye, evoking strength and steadfastness. In the shade of the firmly rooted tree, as a parable for the good word, God will establish firmly those who believe with the firm word in this world and in the hereafter. And in the shade of the evil tree, uprooted from the surface of the earth, with neither stability nor endurance, and God lets the wrongdoers go astray. Thus, the images, the meanings, and the expressions all align harmoniously within the context. God establishes those who believe in this world and in the hereafter with the firm word of faith, which is rooted in their hearts and steadfast in their nature, bearing fruits of righteous deeds that are ever renewing and enduring in life. He establishes them with the words of the Qur'an and the words of the Messenger, and with his promise of victory for the truth in this world and triumph in the hereafter. All of these are firm, truthful words, not subject to change or deviation, and their followers are not touched by doubt, confusion, or hesitation. And God lets the wrongdoers go astray through their wrongdoing and their idolatry, for in the Quranic context, wrongdoing often means idolatry. And through their distance from the guiding light and their wandering in the wilderness of darkness, delusions and superstitions, following laws and systems born of desires, not of God's choice. He leads them astray according to his law, which decrees that those who wrong themselves and turn away from the light and submit to their desires will end up lost, wandering, and astray. And God does what he wills, by his absolute will, which chooses the law but is not bound by it, until wisdom demands its alteration, and then it changes within the realm of his will, which no force can resist and no obstacle can stand in its way. Everything in existence occurs according to his will, and with this conclusion, the commentary on the great story of the messengers and their calls comes to an end. This story has dominated the first and largest portion of the surah, named after Ibrahim, the father of the prophets, the shaded, fruitful tree, bearing the finest fruits, and the ever-renewing good word throughout successive generations, always containing the great truth, the truth of the one, unchanging message, the truth of the one, unaltered call, and the truth of the oneness of God, the all-powerful, the Almighty. Now, we pause briefly to reflect upon the prominent realities presented by the story of the messengers and their confrontation with Jahiliyyah. These are the truths we briefly touched upon during our discussion of the Quranic context, but which require further reflection and independent contemplation. We come away from this story with a clear primary truth, recounted to us by the all-wise, the all-knowing. The caravan of faith, since the dawn of human history, has been a single, unbroken caravan, led by the noble messengers of God, all calling to the same truth, proclaiming the same message and walking the same path. All of them call to the worship of the one God, the sustainer of all being. All of them worship none but him, place their trust in none but him, seek refuge in none but him, and find support in none but him. Thus, the belief in the one God is not, as the scholars of comparative religion claim, a belief that evolved and progressed from polytheism to dualism to monotheism, or from the worship of totems, spirits, stars, and planets to the worship of the one God. Nor is it a belief that developed and progressed in tandem with human experience and knowledge, or political systems evolving toward unity under the rule of a single authority. Belief in the one God was brought by the divine messages from the dawn of history. This truth has not changed in a single one of the messages, nor in any one of the heavenly religions, as the all-wise, the all-knowing recounts to us. If those scholars had said that humanity's receptivity to the monotheistic creed brought by the messengers progressed from one era to the next, and that the polytheistic Jahiliyas were influenced by the successive monotheistic messages that the procession of noble messengers confronted them with time and again, until a time came when the monotheistic creed became more acceptable to the masses than before, due to the ongoing succession of monotheistic messages and other factors they single out as influential. If those scholars had said something like this, it might have been plausible. But they are influenced by a method of inquiry that is rooted from the outset in an ancient, deep-seated hostility toward the Church in Europe, even if contemporary scholars do not consciously notice it, and in a hidden desire, whether conscious or unconscious, to destroy the religious method of thinking and to prove that religion was never a revelation from God, but rather a human endeavour, subject to the same rules of development as human thought, experience, and scientific knowledge. This ancient hostility and this hidden desire are the sources from which the method of comparative religion springs. And yet it is still called science, deceiving many. If anyone may be deceived by such science, no Muslim who believes in his religion and respects its method of establishing such truths should be deceived for even a single moment. Nor should he ever espouse an opinion that directly contradicts the tenets of his faith and its clear method in this critical matter. This noble procession of messengers faced the misguided humanity then with a single call and a single creed, just as the Jahiliyyah faced this noble procession and this single call with the same creed in a single confrontation, as the Quranic context portrays it, transcending time and place, emphasizing the one continuous truth beyond the limitations of time and space. Just as the call of the messengers did not change, so too did the confrontation with Jahiliyyah remain unchanged. This is a truth that deserves contemplation. Jahiliyyah is always Jahiliyyah across the span of time. Jahiliyyah is not a historical period, but rather a state of mind, a belief, a worldview, and an organic societal structure based on these elements. Jahiliyyah from the outset is founded upon the subjugation of human beings by other human beings and upon the deification of something other than God. Whether this belief is based on polytheism or on the oneness of God alongside the multiplicity of sustainers, i.e. rulers, it still establishes Jahiliyyah in all of its secondary characteristics. And the call of the messengers is founded upon the oneness of God, the removal of false deities, and the devotion of religion entirely to God, that is, the devotion of obedience entirely to God alone, and the recognition of his exclusive sustainership, which means his exclusive sovereignty and authority. Thus, it comes into direct conflict with the foundation upon which Jahiliyyah rests, and becomes, by its very nature, a threat to the existence of Jahiliyyah, especially when the call of Islam takes on the form of a distinct community, drawing individuals away from the ignorant society and separating them from it in terms of belief, leadership, and allegiance. This is an inevitable requirement of the Islamic call, in every place and every time. When the ignorant society, functioning as an organic whole, feels the threat posed to its foundation by the Islamic creed, and the threat to its very existence posed by the emergence of a distinct Islamic community that separates itself from it and opposes it in both belief and leadership, then the ignorant society reveals its true stance toward the Islamic call. It is a battle between two existences that can never coexist in peace or harmony. A battle between two organic communities, each founded on a principle that is diametrically opposed to the other. The ignorant Jahili society is based on the multiplicity of gods, or the multiplicity of sustainers, whereby human beings bow down to other human beings. The Islamic society, on the other hand, is based on the oneness of divinity and the oneness of sustainership, where no human being submits to another human being. Since the Islamic community, in its early stages, slowly consumes the body of the ignorant society, and since it must eventually confront the ignorant community to take over its leadership and emancipate all people from servitude to other human beings in favor of servitude to God alone, this confrontation is inevitable. It is an inescapable outcome whenever the Islamic message follows its rightful course. Therefore, Jahiliyyah, cannot tolerate the message of Islam from the very beginning. This explains why the confrontation between the ignorant society and the messengers of God has always been the same. It is a defense of the self against invasion, a defense of the usurped sovereignty, which is one of the exclusive attributes of divinity that, in the realm of Jahiliyyah, is usurped by human beings. Since this is how Jahiliyyah perceives the threat of the Islamic message, it engages in a life-or-death struggle against it, a battle with no leniency, no truce, no coexistence, and no peace. Jahiliyyah does not deceive itself about the nature of the battle, and neither do the noble messengers, peace and blessings be upon them, deceive themselves or their followers about the true nature of the conflict. Those who disbelieved said to their messengers, "We will surely expel you from our land unless you return to our religion." They do not accept that the messengers and their followers should distinguish themselves by their faith, leadership, and their distinct community. Instead, they demand that these believers return to their religion, merge with their society, and dissolve into its fabric, or else they will be driven out and exiled from their land. The noble messengers did not agree to merge into the ignorant society, nor to dissolve within it, nor to lose the identity of their distinct community, a community founded on an entirely different basis than the one upon which the ignorant society rests. They did not say, as some people today who fail to grasp the essence of Islam and the organic nature of societies might say, "Very well, let us merge with their religion so that we can carry out our mission and serve our faith from within." It is inevitable that a Muslim distinguished by his faith in an ignorant society will also be distinguished by his Islamic community, leadership and loyalty. This is not a matter of choice, it is a necessity stemming from the organic structure of societies. This structure makes the ignorant society particularly sensitive to the Islamic message, which is based on the servitude of people to God alone and the removal of false sustainers from positions of leadership and authority. It also ensures that every Muslim who becomes too comfortable in the ignorant society ends up serving that society rather than serving Islam, as some naive individuals might believe. There remains, however, the divine truth that must never be forgotten by those who call to God under all circumstances. The realization of God's promise of victory and empowerment for his allies, and the decisive separation between them and their people, can only occur after the followers of the call have clearly distinguished themselves and taken a stand. This separation, this decisive stand for the truth they carry, is a prerequisite. God's intervention does not occur while the followers of the call are still mingling with the ignorant society, blending into its circumstances and participating in its structures. Every period of such mingling delays God's promise of victory and empowerment. This is an immense and weighty responsibility that the callers to God must carefully consider with a clear and deep understanding. Finally, let us stand in awe before the dazzling beauty with which the Qur'an depicts the procession of faith as it confronts the misguided Jahiliyyah across the ages. It is the beauty of innate, simple, clear, profound truth, confident, assured, serene, and deeply rooted. Their messengers said to them, "Is there any doubt about God, the originator of the heavens and the earth? He calls you to forgive you your sins and give you respite for a fixed term." Their messengers said to them, "We are only human beings like yourselves, but God bestows his favor upon whomever he wills of his servants, and it is not for us to bring you any authority except by God's permission. So let the believers put their trust in God." And why should we not put our trust in God when he has guided us to our paths? We will certainly endure your harm, and in God let the trusting put their trust. This dazzling beauty arises from the way the Quran unites the messengers into one single procession against the unified Jahiliyyah, portraying the abiding truth behind the ever-changing circumstances. It highlights the distinguishing features of the message carried by the messengers and of the Jahiliyyah they face, transcending time, place, race and nation. This beauty is further manifested in the revelation of the connection between the truth borne by the messengers and the truth embedded in the very fabric of existence. Their messengers said, Is there any doubt about God, the originator of the heavens and the earth? And why should we not put our trust in God when He has guided us to our paths? Do you not see that God created the heavens and the earth in truth? If He wills, He can do away with you and bring forth a new creation, and that is not difficult for God. Thus, the deep relationship between the truth of this message and the truth embedded in the entire existence is revealed. It becomes evident that it is one truth connected to God, the ultimate truth, firm, steadfast, and deeply rooted, like a good tree whose roots are firm and whose branches reach the sky. By contrast, all that opposes it is falsehood, fleeting and unstable, like an evil tree, uprooted from the earth, having no stability. This beauty is also reflected in the profound awareness the messengers possess of who their sustainer is, and of the true nature of divinity as it manifests within the hearts of this chosen group of God's servants. And why should we not put our trust in God when He has guided us to our paths? We will certainly endure your harm, and in God let the trusting put their trust. These are glimpses of that dazzling beauty which human expression can only point to, like one pointing to a distant star, unable to fully capture its brilliance but merely drawing the eye toward its light. Do you not see those who exchanged God's favour for ingratitude and settled their people in the abode of ruin, hell in which they will burn? And what an evil resting place! And they set up equals to God to mislead others from His way. Say, enjoy yourselves, for your destination is the fire. Say to my servants who have believed that they should establish prayer and spend from what we have provided for them, secretly and openly, before a day comes in which there will be no trade and no friendship. It is God who created the heavens and the earth and sent down rain from the sky, bringing forth fruits as sustenance for you. He has subjected the ships to you, so they may sail through the sea by His command, and He has subjected the rivers to you. He has also subjected the sun and the moon to you, both constantly pursuing their courses, and He has subjected the night and the day to you. And He has given you from all that you asked of Him. And if you were to count the blessings of God, you could never enumerate them. Indeed, man is most unjust and ungrateful. And remember when Abraham said, "My sustainer, make this land secure and keep me and my children away from worshipping idols." My sustainer, they have indeed led many people astray, so whoever follows me is of me, and whoever disobeys me, then surely you are most forgiving, most merciful. Our sustainer, I have settled some of my descendants in an uncultivated valley near your sacred house. Our sustainer, so that they may establish prayer, so make the hearts of people inclined toward them, and provide them with fruits, so they may be grateful. Our sustainer indeed, you know what we conceal and what we reveal. Nothing is hidden from God in the earth or in the heavens. Praise be to God, who has granted me in my old age Ishmael and Isaac. Indeed, my sustainer is the hearer of prayer. My sustainer, make me an establisher of prayer, and from my descendants as well. Our sustainer, accept my supplication. Our sustainer, forgive me and my parents and the believers on the day when the reckoning will take place. And never think that God is unaware of what the wrongdoers do. He only delays them for a day when eyes will stare in horror, racing ahead, their heads raised up, their gaze not returning to them, and their hearts void. And warn the people of the day when the punishment will come upon them, and the wrongdoers will say, "Our sustainer, delay us for just a short while, and we will answer your call and follow the messengers." But it will be said to them, "Did you not swear before that you would never perish? And you lived in the homes of those who wronged themselves, and it had become clear to you how we dealt with them, and we had presented to you many examples. And indeed they planned their plan, but with God is their plan, even if their plan could move the mountains." So do not think that God will fail His promise to His messengers. Indeed, God is almighty, capable of retribution. On the day when the earth will be replaced by another earth and the heavens as well, and all will appear before God, the One, the Supreme. And you will see the criminals on that day, bound together in chains, their garments of liquid pitch, and their faces covered by the fire, so that God may recompense every soul for what it earned. Indeed, God is swift in reckoning. This is a message for mankind that they may be warned by it, and that they may know that He is the only God, and that those of understanding may take heed. This second section flows naturally from the first, harmonizing with it and drawing from it. The first section contained the message of the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, calling people out of darkness into light by the permission of their sustainer. It also carried the message of Moses, peace be upon him, calling his people out of darkness into light and reminding them of the days of God. He reminded them of God's blessings and declared to them God's promise, "If you are grateful, I will surely increase you, but if you are ungrateful, then my punishment is severe." Then, the story of the previous prophets and their rejectors was presented. The narrative began and then withdrew from the context, allowing the story to unfold its stages and scenes until it culminated in the disbelievers standing before Satan, listening to his profound sermon, though at that time sermons would be of no avail. Now the narrative returns to the disbelievers among the people of Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him, after presenting them with that long sequence of events. These are the ones upon whom God has bestowed his favour among his other favours, by sending a messenger to lead them out of darkness into light, calling them so that God may forgive them. Yet they reject the blessing, replacing it with ingratitude, preferring disbelief over the prophet and the call to faith. Thus, the second section begins by marvelling at the state of those who exchange God's blessing for ingratitude, leading their people to the abode of ruin, just as their predecessors led their followers to the fire, as recounted in the story of the messengers and the disbelievers. The narrative then moves on to highlight God's blessings upon humanity by presenting the grand and prominent scenes of the universe. It offers a model of gratitude through the example of Abraham, the friend of God. After instructing the believers to engage in a form of gratitude, prayer and benevolent deeds for God's servants, before the inevitable day arrives, a day when wealth will no longer avail, when there will be no commerce nor friendship. As for those who disbelieve, they are not left forgotten or neglected. Rather, they are only given respite until a day when eyes will stare in horror. And as for God's promise to his messengers, it will surely come to pass, no matter how much the disbelievers plot and scheme, even if their schemes could move mountains. Thus, the second section is seamlessly integrated with the first, maintaining coherence and harmony. Do you not see those who exchanged God's favour for ingratitude and settled their people in the abode of ruin, hell in which they will burn, and what an evil resting place? And they set up equals to God to mislead others from his way, say, "Enjoy yourselves, for your destination is the fire." Do you not see this astonishing state of affairs, the state of those who were granted God's favour, embodied in a messenger, a call to faith, and a leadership that leads to forgiveness and a destiny in paradise? And yet they abandon all of this and choose disbelief instead. These are the leaders of your people, the elders and chiefs, just as the elders and chiefs of every people before them did the same. Through this strange substitution, they led their people to hell and settled them there, just as we have witnessed earlier with the previous nations. What a miserable resting place they have found, and what an evil abode it is. Do you not see the strange behaviour of these people after they have already witnessed what happened to those before them? The Qur'an presented these scenes to them in vivid detail in the previous section of the Surah, as if they were witnessing it firsthand. And indeed, it is a reality. The Quranic narrative only goes so far as to depict things that have been decreed to happen as though they are already unfolding before the eyes. They have exchanged the blessing of the messenger and his call for disbelief. His call was to the oneness of God, but they abandoned it, and they set up equals to God to mislead others from his way. They ascribe to God rivals and partners, worshipping them as they worship God, submitting to their authority as they submit to God's, and acknowledging in them what belongs solely to God's divinity. They set up these equals to God deliberately, to lead people astray from his path, the one true path that admits no multiplicity or divergence. The text also implies that the chiefs and leaders of the people deliberately sought to mislead their followers from the path of God, by setting up these equals. The belief in the oneness of God poses a threat to the tyrants and their interests in every era, not only in the era of the first Jahiliyyah, but in every age of Jahiliyyah, wherever people deviate from absolute monotheism. In every form of deviation, they surrender their leadership to their chiefs, relinquish their freedom and individuality, submit to their whims and desires, and derive their laws from the whims of these leaders rather than from the revelation of God. At this point, the call to the oneness of God becomes a threat to the chiefs, who then seek to suppress it by any means necessary. This is why in the first age of Jahiliyyah they set up false gods as equals to God. And today they enact laws made by human beings that command what God has not commanded and forbid what God has not forbidden. Those who create these laws are placed in the hearts of the misguided as equals to God, both in the minds of the people and in the reality of life. So, O Messenger, say to them, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves for a brief time in this life until the appointed time decreed by God. The outcome is already known, for your destination is the fire. And then turn away from them and turn instead to my servants who have believed. Turn to those who are receptive to exhortation, who accept God's blessing without rejecting it, who do not exchange it for disbelief. Turn to them and teach them how to show gratitude through worship and obedience and through kindness to God's creation. Say to my servants who have believed, establish prayer and spend from what we have provided for you secretly and openly, before a day comes in which there will be no trade and no friendship. Say to my servants who have believed, show gratitude to your sustainer by establishing prayer, for prayer is the most distinctive manifestation of gratitude to God, and spend from the sustenance we have provided for you secretly and openly, secretly so that the dignity of the recipient may be preserved, and so that the integrity of the giver may not be compromised by ostentation, and openly, so that the act of giving may serve as a public declaration of obedience, fulfilling the obligation and setting a good example for the community. These are matters left to the sensitivity of the believing conscience and its awareness of the circumstances. Tell them, let them give in order to increase their stored treasure, before the day comes when wealth will no longer grow through trade, nor will friendship be of any benefit. Only the stored deeds will be of value before the coming of a day when there will be neither trade nor friendship. And here the book of the universe is opened wide, and its magnificent pages speak of God's countless blessings. Its vast and boundless chapters unfold before the eye, filled with the colours of these blessings, the heavens and the earth, the sun and the moon, night and day, the water that descends from the sky, and the fruits that spring forth from the earth, the seas through which ships sail, and the rivers that flow with sustenance. These cosmic pages are displayed for all to see, yet in their Jahiliyyah, human beings neither look nor read, nor reflect nor give thanks. Indeed, mankind is most unjust and ungrateful. He exchanges God's blessings with ingratitude and sets up equals to God, even though it is God who creates and provides, and who has subjugated the universe for the benefit of humankind. It is God who created the heavens and the earth and sent down water from the sky, bringing forth fruits as provision for you. And he has subjected the ships to sail through the sea by his command, and he has subjected the rivers to you. He has also subjected the sun and the moon, both constantly pursuing their courses, and he has subjected the night and the day to you. And he has given you from all that you asked of him. And if you were to count the blessings of God, you could never enumerate them. Indeed, man is most unjust and ungrateful. It is a campaign, a lashing of the conscience, a campaign whose instruments are the mighty heavens and earth, the sun and the moon, night and day, the seas and rivers, the rain and the fruits. Lashes that strike with rhythm, with resonance, with a sting that pierces the heart of this unjust, ungrateful human being. One of the miracles of this book is that it ties every scene of the universe and every stirring of the soul back to the belief in the oneness of God. It transforms every flicker in the pages of the cosmos or in the conscience of man into a sign or an inspiration. Thus, the entire cosmos, with all that it contains and all that inhabits it, becomes a grand exhibition of God's signs, where the hand of omnipotence is at work, and where its effects are visible in every scene and every image, in every shade and every shadow. It does not present the issues of divinity and servitude as an abstract theological debate, nor as a dry intellectual philosophy, void of life and emotion, which neither touches the human heart, nor influences it, nor inspires it. Instead, it presents these issues in the realm of real-world influences and inspirations, drawn from the scenes of the universe, the domains of creation, the innate instincts, and the self-evident truths of perception. All of this is done with beauty, wonder, and harmony. The magnificent scene displayed here, brimming with the manifestations of God's grace and his favours, is painted by the masterful brush of divine artistry. Its lines follow the course of these favours in relation to humankind. The heavens and the earth are one line. This is followed by the line of water descending from the sky and the fruits sprouting from the earth with this water. Then comes the line of the sea, where ships sail, and the rivers that flow with life and sustenance. The brush returns once more to the canvas of the sky, drawing a new line, the sun and the moon. Then it draws another line on the canvas of the earth, connected to the sun and the moon, the line of night and day. Finally, the brush completes the painting with a final overarching stroke that encircles and shades the entire canvas. And he has given you from all that you asked of him. And if you were to count the blessings of God, you could never enumerate them. This is the miraculous coordination where every stroke, every line, every colour and every shade is in perfect harmony with the scene of the cosmos and the panorama of divine favours. Is all of this truly subjugated for humanity? Is this vast universe truly subjected to this small, insignificant creature? The heavens send down water, the earth receives it, and fruits spring forth between them. The sea is made to carry ships by God's command, and the rivers flow with life and sustenance for the benefit of humanity. The sun and the moon are in constant, tireless motion, and night and day alternate in perfect succession. Is all of this for humankind? And yet man does not give thanks, nor does he remember. Indeed, man is most unjust and ungrateful. It is God who created the heavens and the earth, and yet, after all this, they set up equals to God. How great then is this injustice, both in estimation and in worshipping creatures from his creation in the heavens or on the earth? And he sent down water from the sky, bringing forth fruits as provision for you. Crops are the primary source of sustenance, the most apparent of God's blessings. Both rain and vegetation follow the divine law by which this universe was created. They follow the natural order that allows rain to fall, crops to grow, fruits to blossom, and all of this to align with the needs of humanity. The growth of a single seed requires the overarching power that governs the entire universe, aligning its celestial bodies and phenomena to nourish this seed and provide it with the elements of life: soil, water, sunlight, and air. Yet people hear the word sustenance and their minds immediately turn to wealth. But the meaning of sustenance is far broader and much deeper than that. The smallest portion of sustenance given to a human being in this vast cosmos requires the movement of countless celestial bodies, all coordinated in perfect harmony, without which this being would not exist, nor would life continue after existence. The examples mentioned in these verses of the subjugation of the celestial bodies and the natural phenomena are enough for a person to realize how they are sustained and carried by the hand of God. And he has subjected the ships to sail through the sea by his command, by endowing the elements with properties that allow ships to float on the water, and by granting humankind the intellect to understand the laws of nature. All of this is subjected to God's command for the benefit of humanity. And he has subjected the rivers to you. The rivers flow, and with them flows life, bringing forth abundance, carrying within them fish, plants, and countless blessings, all for the benefit of humankind and for the creatures that humankind utilizes. And he has subjected the sun and the moon, both constantly pursuing their courses. Though man does not use the sun and the moon directly, as he does with water, fruits, seas, ships and rivers, he benefits from their effects. He draws from them the essential materials and energies of life. They are subjected by the cosmic order to emit what humankind needs for survival and sustenance, even down to the very cells of his body, which are sustained and renewed by their influence. And he has subjected the night and the day to you. Night and day are also subjected according to the needs of humankind and his nature. They provide cycles of activity and rest suited to the rhythm of human life. If day were perpetual or night unending, the human body would deteriorate, and the world around him would fall into chaos, making life and productivity impossible. These are but the broad strokes in the grand canvas of divine favours, and in every stroke there are countless details. Hence the verse concludes with a general statement suitable to the vastness of the scene and the overarching atmosphere, and he has given you from all that you asked of him, of wealth, offspring, health, beauty and enjoyment. And if you were to count the blessings of God, you could never enumerate them. They are far greater and more numerous than any human being or all of humankind could ever count. For human beings are bound by the limitations of time between a beginning and an end, and by the limits of knowledge tied to time and space. But God's blessings are limitless, and beyond their sheer quantity, they are beyond human comprehension. And after all of this, they set up equals to God? After all of this, they do not give thanks for God's blessings, but instead exchange them for ingratitude? Indeed, man is most unjust and ungrateful. When a person's conscience awakens, and he gazes at the universe around him, realizing that it is subjugated for his benefit, whether directly or through the natural laws that govern life, and when he contemplates the world around him, realizing that it is his friend by the mercy of God, his helper by the power of God, made easy for him by God's subjugation. When a person's conscience awakens and he gazes and reflects and ponders, he cannot help but tremble, bow down in humility and give thanks. He will continuously turn to his benefactor, whether in hardship, seeking relief, or in times of ease, asking that the blessings be preserved. The perfect example of the grateful, remembering servant is the father of the prophets, Abraham, whose character pervades this surah, just as the theme of blessings pervades it, with all that relates to gratitude or ingratitude. Thus the surah brings Abraham into the scene in a moment of humble devotion, marked by gratitude, filled with supplication, reverberating with prayer in a gentle flowing tone that ascends toward the heavens. And remember when Abraham said, "My sustainer, make this city secure and keep me and my children away from worshipping idols. My sustainer, they have indeed led many people astray. So whoever follows me is of me, and whoever disobeys me, then surely you are most forgiving, most merciful. My sustainer, I have settled some of my descendants in an uncultivated valley near your sacred house, our sustainer, that they may establish prayer. So make the hearts of people incline toward them, and provide them with fruit so that they may be grateful. Our sustainer, you know what we conceal and what we reveal. Nothing is hidden from God in the earth or in the heavens. Praise be to God who has granted me in my old age Ishmael and Isaac. Indeed, my sustainer is the hearer of prayer. My sustainer, make me an establisher of prayer, and from my descendants as well. Our sustainer, accept my supplication. Our sustainer, forgive me, my parents, and the believers, on the day when the reckoning will take place. The context here portrays Abraham, peace be upon him, beside the house of God, which he built in the very city that later became home to the Quraysh, who would go on to disbelieve in God while taking pride in the house that Abraham built for the worship of God. The surah depicts Abraham in this scene of humble supplication, filled with remembrance and gratitude, in order to bring the deniers back to recognition, to return the ungrateful to gratitude, to awaken the forgetful to remembrance, and to lead the wayward among his descendants back to the path of their forefather, so that they may follow his example and find guidance. Abraham begins his prayer, "My sustainer, make this city secure." For the blessing of security is one that touches the human being deeply, a blessing that is intertwined with his concern for his own safety. The context mentions it here to remind the inhabitants of that city, those who take pride in this blessing but do not give thanks for it, that God answered the prayer of their forefather Abraham and made the city secure. Yet they have strayed far from the path of Abraham, rejecting God's blessings, setting up equals to him, and turning others away from his path. The next part of Abraham's prayer was, "And keep me and my children away from worshipping idols." In Abraham's second request, we see his total submission to his sustainer, his complete reliance on him in the most intimate feelings of his heart. He calls upon God to protect him and his children from idol worship, seeking God's help in this matter and asking for his guidance. This is to highlight that this, too, is a blessing from God. Indeed, it is a great blessing to be removed from the darkness of polytheism and jahiliyyah into the light of belief in God's oneness. It is a blessing to be freed from confusion, doubt, misguidance, and wandering, and to find knowledge, certainty, tranquility, and peace. It is a blessing to be released from the humiliating servitude to many false sustainers, and to submit instead to the noble servitude to the one sustainer of all creation. This is the blessing that Abraham asks God to preserve for him, that he and his children be kept away from worshipping idols. Abraham makes this request because he has witnessed and understood how many people have gone astray through idol worship in his own generation and in the generations before him. Many have been led astray. Many have been tempted and captivated by these idols. Indeed, they are a great trial. My sustainer, they have indeed led many people astray. He then continues his prayer. As for those who follow his path and are not led astray by idols, they belong to him. They are connected to him by the greatest bond, the bond of faith. So whoever follows me is of me. And as for those who disobey him, he leaves their fate to God. And whoever disobeys me, then surely you are most forgiving, most merciful. Here we see the compassionate, tender nature of Abraham, peace be upon him, who is often described as forbearing, compassionate, and penitent. He does not ask for the destruction of those who disobey him, nor does he hasten punishment upon them. In fact, he does not even mention punishment. Instead, he entrusts them to God's forgiveness and mercy. Under the shade of this prayer, the shadow of their disobedience fades away, as Abraham, peace be upon him, mercifully conceals it under the vast canopy of God's forgiveness and mercy. Abraham continues his prayer, recalling how he left some of his descendants in the barren, desolate valley beside the sacred house, and he reminds God of the purpose for which he did so. My sustainer, I have settled some of my descendants in an uncultivated valley near your sacred house. Why? Our sustainer, that they may establish prayer. This was the reason for which he left them in that barren, desolate land. And this is the reason why they endure hardship and deprivation. So make the hearts of people incline toward them. The expression here is tender and delicate, depicting hearts as if they were fluttering, like birds with wings, inclining toward this sacred house and its inhabitants in that barren valley. It is a soft and gentle expression that brings life even to the barren land through the tenderness of these hearts, and provide them with fruits through those very hearts that flutter toward them from every distant place. Why? Is it merely so that they may eat, be nourished, and enjoy the fruits? Yes, but also so that this may lead to something greater that Abraham, peace be upon him, hopes for, so that they may be grateful. Thus, the purpose of settling near the sacred house is made clear. It is so that they may establish prayer in its fullest form for the sake of God alone. And the purpose of the supplication for hearts to incline toward them and for sustenance to be provided for them is also made clear. It is so that they may be thankful to God, the bestower of all blessings. In the shadow of this prayer, the stark contrast becomes evident between the attitude of the Quraysh, the neighbors of the sacred house, and the attitude of Abraham, peace be upon him. There is no prayer established for God, nor is there any gratitude. Despite the fulfillment of Abraham's prayer, the inclination of hearts, and the abundance of fruits, Abraham concludes his prayer for his descendants, asking God to grant them the means to establish prayer and to show gratitude. He affirms that God knows what is in their hearts, whether they are truly inclined toward remembrance and gratitude. The goal is not merely outward displays, nor public invocations and rituals, but the sincere turning of the heart toward God, who knows what is hidden and what is manifest, and before whom nothing in the heavens or the earth is concealed. Our Sustainer, you know what we conceal and what we reveal. Nothing is hidden from God in the earth or in the heavens. Abraham then recalls God's previous blessing upon him, and his tongue is filled with praise and gratitude, as is the way of the righteous servant who remembers and gives thanks. Praise be to God, who has granted me in my old age Ishmael and Isaac. Indeed, my Sustainer is the hearer of prayer. The gift of offspring in old age has a profound impact on the soul. Offspring are a form of extension, and what greater blessing could there be than this gift of continuity, especially when one feels the approach of the end and the innate desire for extension is at its peak. Thus, Abraham praises God and seeks more of his mercy. Indeed, my Sustainer is the hearer of prayer. He follows this expression of gratitude with a prayer to God, asking him to help him continue to give thanks through worship and obedience. He declares his resolve to remain steadfast in worship, but also acknowledges his fear that something might prevent him or divert him from it. So he seeks God's help to fulfill his intention and to accept his prayer. My Sustainer, make me an establisher of prayer, and from my descendants as well. Our Sustainer, accept my supplication. In the shadow of this prayer, we once again see the stark contrast between the attitude of the Quraysh, the neighbors of the sacred house, and the attitude of Abraham, peace be upon him. Here is Abraham asking God for his help in establishing prayer, hoping and praying that God will guide him and his descendants to this path. And here are the Quraysh, turning away from prayer, ignoring it, and rejecting the messenger who reminds them of what Abraham, peace be upon him, prayed to God for, that he and his descendants may be established in prayer. Ibrahim concludes his humble, devout prayer with a request for forgiveness for himself, his parents, and for all the believers on the day of reckoning, when no one shall benefit except through their own deeds and through God's forgiveness for their shortcomings. Our Sustainer, forgive me and my parents and the believers on the day when the reckoning will take place. Thus the long scene comes to an end, the scene of the devout, humble supplication, and the scene of enumerating the divine blessings and expressing gratitude for them, all set in a soft, undulating rhythm Psalm 21:11, which casts a gentle and tender shadow over the entire moment. Hearts are drawn closer to God, and minds reflect upon his blessings. Ibrahim, the father of the prophets, stands as a model of the grateful and mindful servant, as all of God's servants ought to be, those to whom this discourse was addressed before this supplication. One cannot overlook Ibrahim's repeated invocation of our Sustainer or Sustainer in every segment of his heartfelt prayer. The constant utterance of God's sustainership over him and his descendants carries deep meaning. He does not refer to God with the attribute of divinity, but instead emphasizes his sustainership. Divinity was rarely disputed in most forms of paganism, especially in the paganism of the Arabs, but the sustainership of God was always a point of contention. It was the question of who holds authority over the affairs of life on earth, a practical and existential issue that deeply impacts human living. This is where the path diverges between Islam and Jahiliyyah, between monotheism and polytheism in the realm of reality. Either people submit to God as their sustainer, or they submit to someone else who becomes their sustainer. This is the decisive point between monotheism and polytheism, between Islam and the Jahiliyyah of paganism in daily life. The Qur'an, by presenting to the polytheists of Arabia the prayer of their ancestor Ibrahim, with its emphasis on sustainership, was pointing out the evident contradiction between their current state and the meaning of this prayer. The discourse then continues with those who exchanged God's blessings for disbelief, leading their people to the abode of ruin. They are still in their injustice, yet the punishment has not overtaken them. The prophet, peace be upon him, was instructed to say to them, "Enjoy for now, for your ultimate destination is the fire." And then he was directed to turn away from them and instead address the believers, commanding them to pray and to give in charity, openly and secretly, before a day comes when there will be no bargaining or friendships. The discourse proceeds, revealing what awaits those who are ungrateful for God's blessings, and when they will meet their inevitable fate, unfolding in successive scenes of the day of resurrection, where the earth and hearts tremble. And do not think that God is unaware of what the wrongdoers do. He but grants them respite until a day when eyes will stare in horror, racing forward, heads raised up, their gaze not returning to them, and their hearts empty. The prophet, peace be upon him, did not think that God was unaware of what the wrongdoers were doing. But it may have seemed so to some, as they saw the oppressors enjoying themselves, hearing the warnings of God's punishment, but not witnessing its immediate realization in this worldly life. This expression unveils the appointed time for their final reckoning, when they will be taken with no further delay or escape. They will be seized on that dreadful day, when eyes will be fixed in terror, wide open with astonishment and awe, utterly overwhelmed by the horror, unable to blink or move. Then another scene is drawn of people in the midst of this overwhelming terror, rushing forward, heedless of everything, not turning aside or pausing. Their heads are raised not by choice, but as if bound by an unseen force, unable to move. Their gaze extends far, fixed on the terror before them, and their hearts are void, empty of any awareness or understanding, like hollow vessels. This is the day to which God delays them, where they will stand in such a state, bearing this terror. The scene is vividly captured through 4 successive verses p21:12, portraying them as if caught like a small bird in the merciless claws of a fearsome hawk. He but grants them respite until a day when eyes will stare in horror, racing forward, heads raised up, their gaze not returning to them, and their hearts empty. The hurried, driven pace, the forced, strained posture, and the terrified, hollow heart. These all testify to the overwhelming dread that makes eyes stare in horror. This is the day they are delayed for, and it awaits them after the respite. Warn the people that when it comes there will be no excuses and no escape. Another scene of that dreadful day is painted here. Warn the people of the day when the punishment will come to them, and the wrongdoers will say, "Our sustainer, delay us for a short term, and we will respond to your call and follow the messengers. But did you not swear before that you would have no end? And you dwelt in the homes of those who wronged themselves, and it was made clear to you how we dealt with them, and we presented to you examples." Warn them of the day when that punishment, vividly described earlier, will descend upon them. On that day, those who wronged themselves will turn to God in pleading, saying, "Our sustainer." Now, though they had once denied him and associated others with him, they will beg, "Delay us for a short term, and we will respond to your call and follow the messengers." Here, the narrative shifts from recounting events to direct address, as if they are present before us, pleading with God. And it feels as though we are already in the hereafter, the world folded away with all that was in it. A rebuke comes from the higher realm, reminding them of their past negligence. But did you not swear before that you would have no end? How do you see it now? Have you not come to an end? You made such claims while the remnants of the past generations stood before you, clear examples of those who wronged themselves and met their inevitable fate. And you dwelt in the homes of those who wronged themselves, and it was made clear to you how we dealt with them, and we presented to you examples. It was astonishing that you lived in the very homes of those who had wronged themselves, who had perished before you, and yet you still swore, "We shall never perish." At this moment of rebuke, the scene concludes, and we understand where they have ended up, and what became of their pleas and their shattered hopes. This parable repeats itself in life, occurring over and over again. How many tyrants occupy the dwellings of tyrants who perished before them, perhaps even at their own hands? And yet those who come after continue in the same path of arrogance and oppression, walking step by step in the footsteps of the destroyed, heedless of the visible signs of their predecessors' downfall. Then they too are seized, like the others before them, and their homes are left empty once again. After the curtain falls on this scene, the discourse shifts back to their present reality, their intense schemes against the prophet and the believers, and their plotting evil in every aspect of life. The discourse instills a sense of certainty that they will be taken to that fate, no matter how severe or cunning their schemes may be. And they plotted their plots. But with God is their plot, even if their plot was such that it could move mountains. God encompasses them and their plotting, even if their schemes were so powerful and far-reaching that they could move mountains, the heaviest, most immovable of things. But their plotting is neither unknown nor beyond reach. It is ever present with God, who deals with it however he wills. So do not think that God will fail in his promise to his messengers. Indeed, God is mighty, capable of retribution. Their plotting has no power, and it cannot hinder the fulfillment of God's promise to his messengers, that he will grant them victory and seize the plotters with the grip of the mighty, the omnipotent. Indeed, God is mighty and capable of retribution. He does not allow the wrongdoer to escape, nor the plotter to succeed. The word retribution here casts the appropriate shadow over their injustice and deceit, for the wrongdoer and the plotter deserve retribution. In relation to God, this means punishing them for their injustice and plotting, thus fulfilling his justice in retribution. This will surely come to pass. The day when the earth will be changed to another earth and the heavens as well. We do not know how this will happen, nor the nature of the new earth and heavens, nor their location. But the text casts a shadow of God's limitless power, which can change the earth and heavens in response to such plotting, no matter how severe it might seem. Suddenly, we see this being realized, and they will appear before God, the One, the Overpowering. They will feel fully exposed, with nothing covering them, no shelter to protect them. They are no longer in their homes nor in their graves. They are out in the open before the One, the Overpowering. The word overpowering here contributes to the atmosphere of overwhelming force, a power before which the plots of the mighty crumble, even if their schemes could move mountains. And now another scene of intense, humiliating and severe punishment unfolds before us, fitting the arrogance and scheming of these oppressors. And you will see the criminals on that day bound together in chains, their garments of liquid pitch and their faces covered in fire. The criminals are shown linked together in chains, walking in rows, 2 by 2, a scene of utter humiliation, underscoring the overpowering might of God. Adding to their humiliation, their garments are described as being made of pitch, a highly flammable, filthy black substance. Their garments of liquid pitch. This imagery conveys both the intense humiliation and the suggestion of extreme combustibility, as their closeness to the fire will ignite them instantly, and their faces covered in fire. It is a scene of burning, humiliating torment, punishment for their plotting and arrogance, so that God may repay every soul for what it earned. Indeed, God is swift in reckoning. They earned plotting and injustice, and their recompense is humiliation and torment. God is swift in reckoning, and the swiftness here corresponds to the plotting and scheming they thought would protect them, hiding them from retribution. But here they are, swiftly repaid for what they earned, in shame, pain, and with swift accounting. In the end, the surah closes as it began, but this time with a loud, resounding proclamation delivered to all of humanity. This is a message for all people, so that they may be warned by it, and so that they may know that He is the one God, and so that those of understanding may reflect. The ultimate purpose of this proclamation and this warning is that people may come to know that He is the one God. This is the foundation of God's religion, upon which His entire way of life is built. And it is not merely knowledge for its own sake, but knowledge that must shape their lives. The aim is that they should submit to God alone, since He is the only God. The true deity is the only one who deserves to be sustainer, meaning ruler, master, legislator and guide. When human life is built upon this foundation, it differs profoundly from any life built upon the foundation of human sustainership over humans, meaning the rulership and submission of some people to others. This difference encompasses belief and perception, as it encompasses rituals and worship, as well as morals and behavior, values and standards, as it encompasses political, economic and social realities, affecting every aspect of individual and collective life alike. Belief in the one God is the foundation of a comprehensive way of life, not merely a quiet conviction lodged in the heart. The scope of belief extends far beyond passive faith. The scope of belief stretches and expands to include every facet of life. The issue of sovereignty in all its aspects is a matter of faith in Islam, just as the issue of morality in its entirety is a matter of faith. From faith springs the way of life that encompasses values and ethics, as well as the institutions and laws in equal measure. We do not truly understand the aims of this Qur'an until we grasp the full scope of faith in this religion, and until we understand the meaning of the declaration of faith. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God on this vast and far-reaching level. Until we comprehend the meaning of worshipping God alone and define it as submitting to God alone, not merely in moments of prayer, but in every aspect of life. The worship of idols, which Ibrahim, peace be upon him, prayed to God to protect him and his descendants from, is not limited to the simplistic forms practiced by the Arabs of Jahiliyyah or by other forms of paganism where idols were fashioned in the shapes of stones or trees, animals or birds, stars or fire, spirits or apparitions. These simplistic images do not encompass all forms of associating others with God, nor do they encompass all forms of idol worship. Limiting the meaning of idolatry to these simplistic images prevents us from recognizing the other, far more pervasive forms of associating others with God. It prevents us from clearly seeing the reality of the new forms of idolatry and paganism that afflict humanity today. We must delve deeply into the nature of associating others with God and its relationship with idols, just as we must delve deeply into the meaning of idols and perceive their ever-renewing forms in the new ages of Jahiliyyah. Associating others with God, contrary to the testimony of there is no God but God, manifests in every situation where people do not submit completely to God in every matter of life. It is enough for a person to submit to God in some aspects of life while submitting to others in other aspects for the essence of idolatry and its reality to be realized. Offering rituals is only one form of submission among many. The present-day examples in the lives of people provide a vivid illustration of idolatry in its deepest reality. A person who turns to God in belief in his exclusive divinity and then submits to God in matters of purification, prayer, fasting, pilgrimage and other rituals, but at the same time submits in his economic, political and social life P2115 to laws and regulations not from God, and submits in his social values and standards to concepts and conventions made by others, and submits in his morals, traditions, customs and clothing to sustainers from among men who impose upon him these morals, traditions, customs and clothing contrary to God's law and command, such a person is practicing idolatry in its most essential form and is contradicting the testimony of there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God in its truest sense. This is what people today overlook, practicing it with ease and laxity, without recognizing that it is the very idolatry practiced by the polytheists of every age. Idols are not necessarily represented in those primitive forms. Idols are merely symbols behind which the tyrant hides, enslaving people in their name and ensuring their submission through them. The idol could not speak, hear or see, but the priest or the ruler would stand behind it, muttering incantations and spells and then pronouncing in its name whatever they wished to pronounce to enslave and subdue the masses. If slogans are raised in any land, at any time, in whose name rulers and priests speak, and in whose name they legislate what God has not permitted of laws, values and regulations, then these are the idols in their essence, function and reality. If nationalism is raised as a slogan, or if the homeland is raised as a slogan, or if the people is raised as a slogan, or if the class is raised as a slogan. And then people are compelled to worship these slogans instead of God, sacrificing to them their lives, wealth, morals and honor, such that whenever God's law and commandments conflict with the demands of these slogans and their requirements, God's law is set aside and the will of these slogans is carried out, or to put it more accurately, the will of the tyrant standing behind these slogans, then this is the worship of idols instead of God. The idol need not be a stone or a piece of wood. It could be an ideology or a slogan. Islam did not come merely to destroy stone and wooden idols. The continuous struggle of the prophets, the great sacrifices, and the severe hardships endured for Islam were not for the mere destruction of idols made of stone and wood. Islam came to establish a clear dividing line between submission to God alone in all matters and submission to others in any form or image. We must trace these forms and images in every situation and every time to determine whether the systems and methods in place are based on monotheism or polytheism. Submission to God alone or submission to various tyrants and idols. Those who think they are in God's religion because they say with their tongues, "We bear witness that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God," and submit to God in matters of purification, rituals, marriage, divorce, and inheritance. But in everything beyond this narrow realm, they submit to others besides God, following laws that God has not permitted, many of which explicitly contradict God's law, and then they sacrifice their lives, wealth, honor, and morals, whether willingly or unwillingly, to achieve what the new idols demand of them. Whenever religion, morality, or honor conflicts with the demands of these idols, God's commands are set aside and the demands of these idols are carried out. Those who think of themselves as Muslims and in God's religion while living in this state, they must wake up to the great idolatry in which they find themselves. But 21:16. God's religion is not the frivolity imagined by those who claim to be Muslims in the East and the West. God's religion is a comprehensive system that governs even the minutest details of daily life. Submission to God alone in every detail and every aspect of daily life, let alone its major principles and comprehensive matters, is God's religion, and it is Islam, which God accepts from no one else. Idolatry does not only manifest in the belief in the divinity of others besides God, it begins with the acceptance of other sustainers besides God. Worshipping idols is not limited to the construction of stones and wood. It is also represented in the raising of slogans that carry the same weight and demands as those idols. Let people in every land examine who holds the highest authority in their lives. To whom do they give full submission? To whom do they render obedience, following and compliance? If this is all for God, then they are in God's religion. But if it is for others besides God, whether alongside him or instead of him, then they are in the religion of the tyrants and idols, and we seek refuge in God. This is a message unto all mankind, hence let them be warned thereby, and let them know that he is the one and only God, and let those endowed with insight take it to heart. 1452.